That's not cut.
Good evening. This is the December 5th regular meeting of the Durango City Council. We'll begin the meeting with a roll call.
Councillor Bettine.
Here.
Councillor Brookie.
Here.
Councillor Youssef. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Marbury. Here. And Mayor White.
Here. Tonight we have two presentations. Call on Police Chief Cameron Afzaal for the first one.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. I'd like to invite Chief Deborah Funston from Palisade Police Department. She's Chief of Police there, and she will represent Colorado Chiefs of Police Association for accreditation that we received in October. So, Chiefs.
Good evening. What a beautiful place you have here. I was commenting a little bit earlier on the drive down here, and I had completely dry roads and blue skies and a little bit of snow. It was gorgeous. So it was my pleasure to come down. So the reason I'm here is I'm here on the behalf of the Colorado Associations of Chiefs of Police. I'm the Southwest Regional Board Member, representative for CACP. My purpose is to present you Chief Afzaal, I hope I pronounced that correctly, with a certificate from the Police Chiefs and the County Sheriff's Association, which found that the Durango Police Department has met the state standards for accreditation. There are 232 law enforcement agencies in Colorado, and only about 15% of these are accredited, so it's quite an accomplishment. The Durango Police Department received their first accreditation on December 1st, 1989, and must undergo a re-accreditation every 5 years. The department was officially re-accredited in 1995, 2001, 2006, 2012, and in January of 2017, the accreditation assessment began again. And in October 2017, the department received notification that they had once again met the established standards and were re-accredited. I cannot stress enough how much of an accomplishment this is. It's not an easy process, and it involves a lot of work and commitment by the entire department. In order to become an accredited law enforcement agency, the Durango Police Department had to meet some 186, and I think somebody mentioned it was over 200 now, mandatory established professional standards, 7 optional professional standards, which were verified by an on-site assessment by law enforcement officials from other jurisdictions serving on the CACP and the CSOC Professional Standards Committee as professional assessors. And I can tell you, cops are not easy on each other. Your police department met or exceeded all established standards. You can be very proud of your police department and its employees. Chief Afzaal and his staff are committed to providing quality law enforcement services to your community. On behalf of the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police and the County Sheriffs of Colorado, it is my pleasure present the Durango Police Department and Chief Afzaal with their accreditation certificate. Congratulations.
Thank you. Before we move on to this presentation, I'd like to recognize a couple of people because even though chiefs' names are mentioned in these accreditations, but really it's more about the staff that's working for us. And specifically would like to recognize Commander Ray Shute. Come on up. Commander Shute is in charge of our administration. So a lot of what makes the department go happens in Commander Schute's shop. And it was his dedication, and Ms. Don Mintz, you can come up on her also. And Ms. Mintz, who at that time was an admin assistant in operations, an admin, where they spent hours and hours and hours looking at each standard and seeing how we met those standards by looking at our own policies. And we have 600 pages of policies. So I definitely want to recognize them, and also Ms. Bartley, my assistant, who I can't really do without. She did also a lot of work near the end to make sure some of the policies match with the standards. So really it's more about Commander Shu, Ms. Vince, and the rest of the police department as the reason why we are here, not necessarily because of me. Actually, we've been accredited since 1989, long before I was even a police officer, so that just goes towards the legacy of this department. So thank you very much, both of you. I have another recognition to make. If I can get Mr. Terry Hecker. Come on up, Terry. So you all know Terry. Terry is our emergency manager for the city. He's been with us since 2007, and he's housed under the police department and reports directly to me. But he's our planning guy who makes sure that all of us have plans in place to make sure that we are able to handle whatever comes next, whether it's man-made or natural disasters. We've had, Lightning Creek Fire this year. We also had another fire on West 3rd Avenue. So as part of Terry's job, Terry he's a planning section chief, and he was recently recertified as a planning section chief, recognized by the State of Colorado Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. It's a great achievement. It was originally certified in 2012. I'm sorry, 2012, and he just got recertified again. And again, this shows the dedication and the skill level that we have in this city to make sure that our city operates in an efficient and effective manner to provide the services to our citizens. So I just want to recognize Terry and congratulate him on getting certification. It's a big achievement for us. I know you have a busy agenda, so thank you for your time here on the council.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, Chief Funston, for coming down for this presentation. Congratulations, Terry Hecker, and to the department. We all appreciate the job you do, and it is really gratifying to have external certification of the professionalism that you manifest to us. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, the next item is the consent agenda, review of the consent agenda. And may we have a reading of the consent agenda?
Item 4.1 is approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of November 20th, 2017. Items 4.2 through 4.4 are discussion and possible action items. 4.2 concerns Resolution R 2017-36, accepting the Basin Co-op annexation petition and setting a public hearing for the annexation and initial zoning for January 16th, 2018. 4.3 concerns approval of the 2018 pay and classification plans. 4.4 concerns Resolution R 2017-37, amending solid waste and recycling rates effective January 1, 2018. Items 4.5 through 4.7 are requests for public hearings with a proposed date of December 19, 2017. 4.5 is to consider the Island Cove Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment. 4.6 is to consider the Island Cove Minor Subdivision. 4.7 is to consider the Mercury Village Lot 4 Conceptual Development Plan. Items 4.8 and 4.9 are final approval of ordinances. 4.8 is Ordinance O 2017-16, approving the annexation and initial zoning for the Garlic addition to the City of Durango and declaring an effective date. And 4.9 is Ordinance O 2017-17, approving the annexation and initial zoning for the 73 Jameson Drive addition to the City of Durango and declaring an effective date.
Is there any member of the public who would like to remove any item from the consent agenda? Any member of council? I would like to remove item 4.3.
Mayor, with that, I move to approve the consent agenda without 4.3.
Second. May we have a roll call?
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor Marbury?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And received a memo today from the city manager saying that there needed to be a minor change in the pay plan as posted in the agenda. So I turn this over to the city manager.
There are three minor corrections to the pay plan, and I would suggest that the council consider this later on the agenda, and I'm suggesting if you inserted it as item 12.1.5, you go through all your budget approvals, and then you can address this at that time. If that's okay with the council?
Yes.
We need a
I
motion?
think we probably need a motion to
amend the
agenda.
I make a motion to take item 4.3 and reinsert it into the agenda as item 12.1.5.
Second. May we have roll call?
Councilor Bettine,
Yes.
Councilor Bricky,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Marbury,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is public participation. Item is set aside for members of the public to speak to items that are otherwise scheduled for public hearings at this meeting. Individuals are entitled to 5 minutes of discussion.
Mayor White, my name is John Simpson. I live at 1831 Crestview Drive. My purpose tonight is to ask you to postpone the sewer rate increase that will be presented tonight in agenda item 11.2. I agree 100% that we need our revenues to increase by 3% due to the $64 million sewer plant that was modeled to only cost $42 million in the 2014 Weldon rate study. In fact, I think the rate increase should be more than 3%. However, there's a major discrepancy between who is paying for the sewer plant and who isn't paying their fair share for the sewer plant. Modifications to the rate structure should be made to more equitably recover the costs from the ratepayers. We look at the sewer charges for various usages so that those with low usages play close to the state average, while those with high usages can expect to pay much more than other communities. The reason for this inequality is the usage charge developed by Weldon. A flow charge is the monthly charge that is added to a bill above the base use. According to the State Colorado Division, Department of Local Affairs, most municipalities do not have a flow charge. Durango is the minority to even have a flow charge. Furthermore, Durango's flow charge of $10.42 proposed for next year is one of the most expensive. The current rate structure is heavily skewed to those who use little or no water in January, February, March. This bargain for the higher income people, such as snowbirds, second home users, retired couples, and single people is possible because those with families who live here year-round have exorbitant rates. In 2018, residents who only used 1,000 gallons per month will pay $347 for the year. Families who use 6,000 gallons per month will pay $972. There's no logic to support this $625 difference. City staff typically only presents information about the average. We should be looking at the entire picture, the low users and the high users. There's no logic to support this because the sewer expenses are mainly fixed, such as the debt repayment and the salaries. Flow charges can be thought if we stop flushing our toilets, will those costs go away? The $3.5 million debt service expense will not go away. The $1.8 million expenses for salaries will not go away. Some may argue that the flow charges are conservation related, but this argument is not valid for sewer, especially for Durango. We take our water from the Animas, we put it right back in the Animas. There's very little use for sewer. We take it from the Florida. I'm sorry. Some may argue that this is low base rate is to protect low income users, but this argument is not valid for sewer, especially for a community with a utility rebate program. Low incomes may typically have the high usages with they don't have access to the low flow fixtures. They have many people living in the house. High income users may be gone for the winter, may have the low flow fixtures. Protection of low income should occur with the existing rebate program, not the rate structure. Additionally, according to DOLA, the Durango plant improvement fees are much below average, which transfers the financial responsibility to the families of Durango. To accomplish this revenue increase that's needed, I suggest looking at two alternatives. First, eliminate the flow charge completely and develop a base fee we all pay equally And number 2, assign a more reasonable flow charge of, say, $4 per 1,000 gallons. Is it possible to be completely fair, but recognize that fairness since 2005 and 2015, elimination of the flow charge is suggested? You're not required to pass the sewer rate increase as part of the requirement of the budget process. I'm in favor of the 3% revenue increase, which is what is shown in the budget. So therefore, the budget can be passed tonight, and you don't have to pass the sewer rate increase. If this passes, inequality between the families who live here year-round and the higher income part-time users will increase. Remember, most municipalities don't have a flow charge. Ours is the highest, even though we have some of the highest fixed costs. We all voted for the sewer plant. We should all pay for the sewer plant. Mayor White.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
Good evening. My name is David Peters. I live at 10 Kennebec Court. Rarely do I give credit to the Durango Herald. They deserve credit for their coverage of City Council over the last few months. An important function of a small-town newspaper is to be a watchdog over local government, and that's exactly what they've been doing. Here's a couple articles that got my attention. October 29th, City Council mandates commitment to address climate change. The resolution mandates climate change training and other related activities for some staff and elected officials. November 14th, City is likely to raise sewer, trash, and recycle rates next year. Part of the 11.5% increase would be to fund global climate change initiatives, which the city puts in a category called sustainability. There are more articles, but I don't have time. It seems the main focus of City Council is global climate change. Did I miss the City Council resolution that turns over city management to the United Nations? The majority of citizens want City Council to focus on our real local issues, not global climate change. And we have plenty of local issues. For example, I've talked to several downtown business owners, and they say the panhandlers have gotten significantly worse this fall. Not only does it hurt businesses, but eventually a citizen will be hurt or even worse, killed by a panhandler who is probably a drug addict or dealer. I visit other resort towns frequently in Colorado, such as Breckenridge, and they do not have as significant a panhandler problem as we do. Yet they are subject to the same state and federal laws we are. Clearly, there's more that can be done here. Regarding the climate change training mandate, I asked my Denver-based attorney if this was legal. For elected officials, the answer is yes. For employees, the answer is probably legal, but definitely could be challenged. To avoid possible problems, I suggest City Council make staff training voluntary. Regarding the utility rate increases, I find it totally unacceptable that you continue to spend our money on symbolic climate change initiatives. This is really sad as it hurts low and middle income families the most. What does City Council have against low and middle income citizens? In Colorado, low income families now spend 22% of their disposable income on utilities. And the City Council wants to raise utility rates to pay for global climate change? That's outrageous. My recommendation is that you do not raise utility rates at all, or at the very least, do not raise them for the part allocated to sustainability. Also, I note the city's annual expenditures have grown very substantially between 2014 to 2017. It's time you focus on ways to be more efficient and reduce spending rather than simply raise our utility rates. So to the citizens of Durango watching tonight, I urge you to attend future City Council meetings and speak up. If you don't, you'll see the city continue to drain your bank accounts with some symbolic global climate change spending. Also, for citizens who've been here for a while, you will recall several years ago when the city tried to pass a grocery bag tax by calling it a fee and bypassing the voters. Fortunately, the voters shot this down after a recall. We appear to have more of the same, seeing the sustainability account category now falls under what's called the enterprise fund. By doing this, they are not subject to Colorado law requiring a balanced budget. Indeed, they have a free pass to spend your money. Finally, I'm not here tonight for myself. I'm here for Durango citizens that live from paycheck to paycheck and find it difficult to pay increased utility bills, which in part are due to climate change spending. I'm here to help them, whether it be through public comment, a recall of some city council members, or a legal challenge on specific issues. Unless city council changes their course, 2018 will be turbulent for city council, and the city attorney might be busier than normal.
Is there any other member of the public who wishes to address the council?
My name is Lisa Bloomquist Palmer. I'm the Executive Director for Homes Fund. I reside at 3202 East 6th Avenue in Durango. And I'm here to encourage the City Council to leave the building standards at the levels that they are now so as not to further increase the costs of housing in Durango. I have a written out statement that I'm planning to read, but before I start reading this, I want to mention that just this morning I read an article in the New York Times about some of the problems that California is facing with their housing and how that affects their environment. And we should learn some lessons from what California is experiencing. In the Bay Area, they have some very strict environmental standards, but those are getting thwarted by their by unaffordable housing, basically.
Ms. Bloomquist Palmer, this item will be, we have a formal public hearing that is scheduled later in the agenda.
I was wondering why no one else was coming up to speak on this. Okay.
Yes.
I apologize. I'll go sit down then.
Okay. No. Does anyone else wish to speak to the council on an item that is not scheduled for hearing tonight? I do expect there will be others when we get to the hearings. With that, we can move on to council reports and actions.
I'll pass. Pass.
I'll pass.
I believe I've got one item. I have to sort of get back to my email. There was simply one it's been quiet. It's been a quiet couple of weeks owing to the holiday, but I had two items. One, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission met yesterday morning. I thought we were going to have a report from the commission, but the work that they're doing, they're seeking to collaborate with Local First. Local First is involved with possibly rolling out essentially a debit card that people can use at local shops and get basically a local rewards card for local shopping. And the Youth Advisory Commission is very interested in promoting shopping local among youth, and I expect we will hear more about that in January. Yesterday I had the privilege to represent the city at a ceremony at the Southern Ute Indian Tribe for retiring Tribal Chairman Clement Frost and also retiring Tribal Council Member Amy Berry. It was very, very interesting to hear the testimonies on the leadership of Chairman Frost, and particularly from the younger members of the council to testifying to him as an elder and all he has taught so many members about the history of the tribe. And there was some concern about some of that legacy being lost, but I don't think Chairman Frost is going away anytime soon, although I think he's not likely to run for the tribal council again. Several of us, I believe, are planning to attend the inauguration of the new tribal council and chair in a couple of weeks, but there's a runoff election that is going to occur between now and then. So I think with that, we will move on to the heart of the agenda tonight. We have a couple of legislative and policy-related hearings. The first is a public hearing to consider the granting of an easement to La Plata Electric Association for underground utilities over city-owned land located at the Durango Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility located at 105 South Camino del Rio. We have a staff report from City Engineer and Project Manager Greg Boyson.
Good evening, Mayor White, members of council. This is a public hearing to consider granting an easement to La Plata Electric Association across city-owned property, which is the Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility. As part of the new process and new equipment that's being installed at this facility, we need additional power and new power. LPEA has agreed to provide us that power with one request, and that's to provide an easement on top of their equipment so they can come in and service and maintain their infrastructure. Both the city manager and myself thought this was a reasonable request, and therefore we're asking for an ordinance to be prepared to grant this easement on city-owned property. That's the conclusion of my short presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
No, it's very straightforward as far as that goes.
Yeah. And I believe I will check with the city attorney. This is a straightforward item, and the ordinance is included as in the agenda documentation, and I believe the recommendation is that we approve the ordinance on first reading at this time.
Yes, that's right.
We need a motion.
Yes.
Well, first of all, we have to wait and open a public hearing. I'm anticipating a little comment from the public,
right.
but this is the formal opportunity for members of the public to comment on this proposal. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I think this is a straightforward item, and I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve the attached ordinance granting an easement to La Plata Electric Association over city-owned land located at the Durango Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility, 105 South Camino del Rio.
And what would the number of that ordinance be?
19.
19, yes.
2017-19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Second.
May we have a roll call?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Marbury?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Brickey?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes. And moving on, the second public hearing, which I believe will take a little longer, is a continued public hearing to consider adoption of the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code and associated amendments to the City Code of Ordinances. Staff report from Ms. Killian.
Good evening, Mayor White, members of the council. Nicole Killian, Assistant Director with the City of Durango Community Development Department. And I just wanted to point out, I do have a handout. I had sent you all an email before the meeting with an updated handout. If you didn't receive it, I can give you a copy. Everybody got one?
Of the rates.
And so there's some copies for the public, if anyone's interested in that. So this is a continuation of the 2015 Energy Conservation Code discussion. We were in front of you on November 20th to discuss all the other 2015 I-codes, and they were all adopted with an effective date of January 1st. And you'll see at the end of your agenda all the ordinances for first reading for those. But the 2015 Energy Conservation Code, or the IECC, was continued to tonight. Back in October, on October 10th, the La Plata County Board of County Commissioners actually voted to approve the 2015 I-codes with the exception of the 2009 Energy Conservation Code, and they are remaining for the current time on the 2003 International Fire Code. And so back in October, we came to City Council for a study session to discuss the codes. And we were proposing the 2009 Energy Conservation Code, which is what we currently use for the city, and to remain using that. As per discussions with the City Council and the City Council and the BOCC on July 13th. One of the reasons why we thought we were going to be consistent with the county was to not look overly restrictive or costly compared to the county in terms of their codes. This would be the first time in a long time that we would be consistent on codes, building codes.
Ms. Killian, could I double check that? I thought that the county has been on 2006.
That's why I said they adopted the 2009, and this would be the first time we would be consistent.
Oh, that would be the, oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought you had said the opposite.
Oh, no, it would be the first time we would be consistent with codes if we keep the 2009. But at October 10th study session, council did ask staff to look into the 2015 Energy Code and do some research, including looking at other communities that are using the 15 code, speak with the local Home Builders Association about their concerns, and also provide examples of the economics. And so that was provided to the City Council in the November 20th packet. There was an error that was corrected, and so I did provide the same information, but I did do some additional research and have some additional information for City Council on the Energy Conservation Code comparison between what we currently use, the 2009 and the 2015. But in your packet, you did receive a list from the Colorado Code Consultants showing the comparisons of the Energy Conservation Code. As Councilor or Mayor White pointed out, some of those were outdated. I did find an additional list on the DOLA website, which I did provide to you in an email, but it's about our regional areas, and so I just want to go through that list for the public. And again, DOLA might be outdated as well, because Bayfield just currently adopted the 15 codes, and that was not on DOLA's website. And also, La Plata County's recent adoptions were not on the website. But what I did find on the DOLA website was that Archuleta County is using a 2009 IECC. Cortez is using the 2009. Dolores is using the 2006. Dolores County does not have one. Ignacio is using the 2003. Mancos is using the 2000. Montezuma County is not using one. Pagosa Springs is using the 2006. San Juan County is using the 2006, and Silverton is using the 2006. And again, this might not be 100% accurate. It's some of the most recent information I could find in just that short notice from today's email. So I wanted to present that as well.
I think since we're right on that, in the other agenda documentation that you presented with the long list statewide, it included Pagosa Springs at 2015.
Yeah, so maybe that one's updated. I would have to probably call Pagosa to find out exactly.
As I know, this afternoon, I looked up on the Bayfield website and they said 2006, but they've had a recent vote, so there may be some inconsistency.
I believe that's true, along with Gunnison and Walsenburg.
What is true?
That Pagosa is on the 2015.
Okay. Well, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No, thank you. We also did receive a letter from the Home Builders Association of Southwest Colorado, and that was included in your November 20th packet, but I also included it in this current packet. Staff did do some research, and part of your packet includes a cost effectiveness analysis that was done by the Department of Energy. We are Climate Zone 5B in that analysis. And a couple of things I want to point out is it does talk about a simple payback period being 4.6 years if you go from the 2009 to the 2015 Energy Code. And it also talks about the first year alone, the cost savings would be about $318 if you go from the 2009 Energy Code to 2015, and that's for your energy usage. So cost savings first year, $318. We also did some other comparisons. I did talk to some builders out in Three Springs that currently do the blower door test, and they said right now it's approximately $1,250 to get a blower door test, and it's a little bit cheaper for attached units. And in terms of determining we couldn't really find an exact cost of what the construction would be between the 2009 and the 2015 energy code. Partially because it's going to be dependent upon the foundation type they use, whether it's cross base, slab on grade. And it's also, there's different types of paths in the 2015 that a builder can choose to take to meet the code. And it's a prescriptive path, a performance path, and then the new energy rating index path. So dependent upon what they choose, what path they choose to take, for instance, prescriptive path is you meet the code as is. So you meet the R values for insulation, and they give you a list, and you have to meet every item. Whereas a performance path, you can choose other forms of construction, and that's when you get something like a blower door test to prove that you meet the 15. So there's different paths you can take to meet the 15, and therefore it's really difficult to give you an exact cost of what the increase would be from the 9 to the 15. We also did some research on the Colorado Department of Local Affairs website. They had a pretty good list of the differences between the 9 and the 12, and then from the 12 and 15. It's a comprehensive list, so I don't want to go through it, but if you have any questions, I can answer those. And then also ResNet, which is the Residential Energy Services Network, had some comparisons. They use the new energy rating index path. And the score is, if you score 100, it's equivalent to the 2016 energy code. And if you
2006.
Sorry, 2006 energy code, thank you. And if you score 0, that means you have a net zero home. And so the 2009 scored 82, which is about 15% to 20% better than the 2006. The 2012 scored an 80, and then the 2015 scored a 55. And then I also, as part of this packet, which I didn't include the last time, is I went through some of the city's policies that we have in place right now. And the first one was the Sustainability Action Plan that the City Council adopted in 2015. And that Objective 4.3 talks about structuring city programs to encourage efficient and effective energy use. And one of the action items is consider adopting an energy efficiency code for buildings, adopt the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code. Again, this was done in 15, approved by council. Also, we just became a STAR certified community. We got a 3-star rating this summer. And one of the action steps for that program is to adopt or upgrade building codes to ensure that new and renovated buildings are more energy efficient. For credit, communities must locally adopt at a minimum the 2015 IECC or later. You can also do the IGCC 2012 version, which is the International Green Construction Code, or the ASHRAE standard 189.1-2011, which is the standard for design of high-performance green buildings. So I just wanted to point out some of the policies that we have in place right now. And then the last one is our comprehensive plan, which we just adopted this year. And policy 4.1.8 states that we should continue to implement the international building codes, including the International Energy Conservation Code. Periodically update city ordinances to adopt the most recent versions of the ICC. And policy 13.1.1 is routinely update city energy codes to improve energy efficiency and foster use of renewable energy technologies. So with that said, we have a lot of policies that want us to be on the most recent energy codes that we can. Staff, we are in a little bit of a predicament because we oversee sustainability for the city, but we also oversee housing for the city. And I did include as part of one of the handouts I had up there, I included a table that talked about the fees for a building permit for a standard 2,000 square foot house with a 400 square foot garage. And right now, it's $17,146 are the city fees. If DFPD, if City Council approves the DFPD impact fee, that would be an additional $988 on top of fees. And so our concern is just housing affordability when we keep tacking on fees, and also building requirements. And so again, like I said, we're in a predicament because we oversee both programs and trying to balance out energy efficiency with affordability of housing. And because the county has adopted the 2009 Energy Code recently, Staff does recommend that we still remain on 2009 Energy Conservation Code, essentially because of the housing affordability and what we're seeing right now in the city. And also, we do not want to be seen as overly restrictive and costly compared to the county. However, like I had stated on November 20th, this is a policy decision of City Council. And so if you do feel inclined to adopt the 15 IECC, staff does recommend a 6-month period, so not becoming effective until July 1st. And that will give us time to have our building official and inspector get some training on the new code, as well as allowing the building industry to come up to speed on the new code. So with that, it is the recommendation of the city manager and the director of community development that the city council, following public comment, presented at the public hearing thereafter by motion, continue to use the 2009 IECC to be consistent with La Plata County. However, if the city council is inclined to adopt the 15 IECC, I do also have a draft motion for that you'll see below, which is motion to consider the adoption of the ordinance prepared by the city attorney to adopt the 2015 IECC to become effective on July 1st of 2018 in the form provided to the city council as an attachment hereto during the introduction of ordinances section of the agenda. So I can answer any questions that you have of staff, if you have any right now.
I have one. In doing some research on this, there was a lot of allusion to a future 2018 IECC. I'm curious, during your research, did that come up? And what I was hearing, seeing, generally understanding is that that new plan is, there are some intentions to ratify some of the more difficult provisions of the most recent code, and I just wanted to see if you could comment on that, please.
I have very basic knowledge of the 2018 IECC. What I do know in speaking to the Home Builders Association is that that was something that they brought to our attention, is they prefer us wait and adopt an 18 rather than a 15. But I don't have a lot of information on what the fixes are. Most of my research was based on the comparisons of the 9 to the 15.
Okay. And then my next question is, the county, I understand, went through a fairly exhaustive process with the stakeholders involved, the building community, other people in the community, weighing in on what they would do, whether they would adopt the 2009 code or go farther. Because I've had such a short tenure here, I also noted that one of the other counselors in the last meeting mentioned that the city had also gone through some of that public process, and I wondered if you could just kind of comment about have we gone through a process like that yet with the city, with some of those stakeholders? Do you think that that would be a good idea if the council decides to stick with the 2009 codes and or wait to adopt the 2015 code?
Yeah, so in 2015, we adopted the 2012 codes with the 2009 Energy Code. And when we were going through that process, we did have a series of public meetings, and our building official hosted some workshops to discuss the 2009 Energy Code and to give the community, the building community, a heads up that in a year, we'd probably be looking at going to the 2015. And that was 2 years ago. So, so we did at some point do that outreach, and we did give the building community the heads up that we were wanting to look at the 15 during that process.
Did you have ample participation in that process?
We did have at some of our meetings, and then when we offered the workshop, we didn't have anybody interested in signing up for that and participating.
Okay. I apologize, I'm done. I've got a couple others. Do you guys mind if I keep rolling?
No, by all means.
So the other question, you mentioned the blower door test at 1,250 and Three Springs as an example of a potential cost. That's not the only cost associated. There's an inspection process and some other costs associated with the increased cost of doing this. In your research versus the other research that you presented in the packet, did you find that at all that Durango area or Southwest Colorado specifically had any higher costs because of availability of those types of inspectors and or the cost of those tests being higher based on transportation and or just the market itself?
I did not compare our blower door test costs to anyone else in the state. I do know from talking with some of the builders that we have 2 companies in the region that do blower door tests. But I also know from experience that once you adopt new codes, you do have more people in the industry come up and start offering those services. But I did not do a comparison of what I was told in Three Springs to anywhere else in the state.
And then final question for you, if the council vote were to stick with the 2009 codes, you know, obviously, I guess this is opinion, but I think the community at large would like to move forward with energy conservation codes regardless of what is decided tonight. And we would like to make sure that the building community has the opportunity and ample opportunity to adjust, perhaps look at 2018 codes or whatever it may be. Do you have any sense of what kind of time frame the building community has said it would take to get comfortably to that? Because I know they have a lot of concern, but you know, if I know we want to move forward with it, I think it's a council goal. If we move forward tonight, so be it. But if we don't, I think one of the things we want to communicate to the building community is we're headed there, and we're probably headed there soon. So did you get any sense from them?
I did not, in terms of our proposed 6 months, I did not get any feedback on that. I know there's representatives here tonight, so they might be able to answer that for you better than I can.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council at this time?
No.
Thanks for raising your questions, Chris. At this time, I will, excuse me, open a hearing for public input. Remind everyone that each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes. If you are speaking for a group of 3 or more, you may, who are willing not to speak to the same issue, then you might speak for 10 minutes. And I do ask everyone to be mindful of both of keeping to your time and also to listen respectfully to everyone who's speaking so that we can move along in an efficient way.
You want to tell them on time?
And Mayor Pro Tem Marbury has agreed to be a timer since I think we've all found in chairing, it's really hard to be looking at the clock and listening at the same time, and also when you're responsible for managing things. So I would now invite public to open the public hearing and invite the public to come comment on this issue. Yep. Since, I guess it would be appropriate to ask Ms. Bloomquist Palmer to continue your remarks.
For jumping the gun earlier. Again, my name is Lisa Bloomquist Palmer. I reside at 3202 East 6th Avenue in Durango, and I'm the executive director for Homes Fund, a nonprofit that focuses on affordable home ownership in Durango and the Southwest Colorado region. So like I was saying, I think we should have learned some lessons from what California, and specifically the Bay Area, but actually all over California probably, is experiencing, where their environmental efforts are getting undermined by a lack of affordable housing because people are needing to drive further and further in order to commute to their jobs and in order to get to where they want to be, because there is no affordable housing where they want to be. There was a great example in the New York Times that I'll happily email to each of you guys, that it was about Berkeley and not being able to develop Berkeley in a way that was leading to any housing supply, and that was causing, it was thwarting their environmental efforts. And I fear that that this will, that moving forward with higher environmental standards will actually have opposite effects because of the effects on affordable housing. So with that, I'm going to read my prepared statement, and please let me know if I hit the time limit. So HUD has designated La Plata County as a difficult to develop area, meaning that the cost of developing housing in La Plata County is high and wages are low, limiting return on investment for developers. We want to encourage developers, particularly developers of affordable and attainable workforce housing, to come into our community. Additional fees and regulations, I fear, will discourage developers from coming to our community. And the only developers who will be willing to come into our community will be those who are building high-end housing that is unattainable for our workforce. The Homes Fund programs help to bridge the gap between what the workforce can afford to pay and the high cost of housing in our area. We see the large gap between what people can afford and what is available. And the problem has been getting worse and worse year over year. The Durango Housing Plan noted that the average housing unit in Durango in 1991 was 3.5 times the average income, but in 2017 it is now 6.9 times the average income. Rising housing prices are putting pressure on the middle class and putting the American dream of homeownership out of their reach. I encourage you to enact policies that increase housing supply to bring down costs so that more working families can afford to live here. Increasing housing costs are having negative effects on our environment as people drive till they qualify, a practice that increases air pollution and congestion on our roads. Too much of our workforce is already unable to afford housing in Durango, and they are already commuting long distances to reach their jobs in Durango. Affordable, walkable communities are environmentally friendly, sustainable, and desirable. I encourage you to enact policies that increase affordable housing within the city limits for both the affordability benefits and for the environmental benefits. I fear that the proposed changes to energy efficiency standards will discourage developers of affordable and attainable housing from coming into our community and may even have counterintuitive negative environmental effects as people drive further and further to attain the housing that they can afford. I encourage you to keep the standards as they are now, as the staff is recommending. Thank you for your time.
May I ask a question?
What I would prefer to do is to listen to all of the speakers, and we might wish to ask some of them come back to, because I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask as well. But I think it would be better for, rather than to start going back and forth with the speakers, let's hear everyone before we engage in some dialogue.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Gwen Unger. I'm on the board of the La Plata Electric Association, but I'm speaking here as an individual not representing LPEA. As some of you know, I'm very concerned about climate change, and that's been much of my focus during my time on the LPEA board. Since the current administration in Washington does not take climate change seriously, to say the least, I believe it's up to the states, counties, cities, and even individuals to step up and make a difference. One of the best ways to reduce CO2 emissions is to conserve energy, don't use it. And that's why I would like to strongly recommend that the City Council adopt the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code. When a building is designed to use less energy, that also means it emits less CO2 into the atmosphere. It does this month after month and year after year for the entire life of the building. On the other hand, a building which was not designed to conserve energy puts more CO2 into the atmosphere, again, month after month for its entire lifetime. And obviously when the source of the energy is electric, the CO2 emissions are not coming out of the building, they're being generated wherever the electricity is being generated. My wife is a realtor for the Wells Group here, and I have a good appreciation for the real estate market in our area, and I know prices are very high. I'm not convinced that any reasonable part of that high price has anything to do with buildings that are being built to conserve energy, because many of those buildings are very old or were built way back when. And it's clearly other things that are driving the price up. Adopting the 2015 code will certainly increase the cost of new buildings, but the energy savings should offset those costs fairly quickly. It's not as if we'd be asking new owners to add to their total costs. Their savings over the life of the building would be substantial. There's not time to talk about all the bad things that will happen to our community in the coming decades if we don't solve the climate change problem. But let's do the right thing for our children and our grandchildren and coming generations. Please adopt the 2015 Conservation Code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Unger.
evening, councilors. My name is Michelle Riot. I reside at 250 West 16th Street here in Durango, and I've lived in Durango since 2001. For those of you who don't know my work, I wanted to note that I've been a sustainability consultant full-time since 1995, and this year my firm, Earthly Ideas, celebrated 25 years in business. We're focused on commercial, institutional, and industrial green building strategies, and we work to improve the environmental impact of these buildings so that they are high performance, healthy, and resource efficient. And in full disclosure, I'm currently consulting to the City of Durango on the Moore Park Shop, and previously was working on the administration building at the Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility. Due to some unforeseen circumstances this year, I have not been involved in the current code adoption process as much as I would like. But in light of the planned move to consider keeping the IECC 2009, I did speak to some city staff, planning commissioners, and councilors regarding my concerns. But I was thrilled to have the opportunity to be here tonight to have additional comment opportunities. I'd like to share that I advocated for the county and the city to adopt energy codes in 2004, because when I was somewhat appalled when I moved to our community and realized that we did not have an energy code in place. It was great to see the county in 2004 and the city in 2005 adopt the IECC 2003. However, I'm here tonight to ask the council to continue being a leader moving forward with adopting the current IECC 2015 in support of its Sustainability Action Plan and council goals and objectives. While a lot of discussion thus far has been based on residential buildings, I'm here to advocate for improved energy efficiency in commercial buildings. I'm sure that all of you realize that setting the code is setting the floor or a low bar, which translates to building to code means you can't build it any worse. But it is rare that projects actually seek to achieve better than code without some incentive. I'm currently working on a PK through 12 school for the Deer Trail 26J school district, which is about a rural school district about 50 miles east of Denver. And while I'm used to having green building rating systems set the standard for energy efficiency, it's not the case here. Due to the state of Colorado adopting the 2015 family of codes, the IECC 2015 is driving energy efficiency on this project. The state adopted the IECC 2015 with no amendments for all state agencies, including public school districts. While I'm not a codes expert, I work closely with design and construction teams to help implement energy efficiency strategies and conservation measures. Usually this comes from implementing energy performance measures in green building rating systems like LEED, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and CHIPS, the Collaborative for High Performance Schools. LEED, for instance, utilizes ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, Standard 90.1, which provides minimum requirements for energy efficient designs for commercial buildings. The IECC allows commercial buildings to use it or ASHRAE 90.1 to show compliance. The called out ASHRAE 90.1 edition in the IECC is 2 years earlier than the IECC edition, meaning that for the IECC 2009, commercial teams can design to ASHRAE 90.1 2007, which is a 10-year-old standard. But for the IECC 2015, commercial teams can design to ASHRAE 90.1 2013. Now here's some statistics related to the advancements in energy costs comparing standard 90.1 for commercial buildings. 90.1 2010 has an 18.2% savings in energy cost as compared to 90.1 2007. And 90.1 2013 has an additional 8.7% energy cost savings. That's 26.9% more energy cost savings for a project that would be using 90.1 2013 compared to 90.1 2007 that the current IECC 2009 allows. I've reviewed the minutes of the November 20th City Council meeting and wanted to commend Mayor White and Councilor Brookie for their wise and informed remarks on the importance and impacts of energy codes. I'd like to expand on a few things in that regard. Construction always struggles with the challenge of upfront costs versus long-term operating costs and the segregation of those two pots of money. Most often someone who's building a building is not going to be living and operating in that building. They're not paying the monies out of the same pool of money. So it's very easy and done far too often that the upfront cost of building overshadows the long-term energy savings to the occupant. The excellent DOE resource that Nicole mentioned earlier that was provided in the November 20th agenda package states that the IECC 2015 provides cost-effective savings for residential buildings in Colorado and for all climate zones in Colorado. I'm not sure if this was what was one of the things corrected in the staff report, but I disagreed in the staff report that the incremental cost is $6,500.
That was it.
That was corrected, okay. Yeah. So we're talking between $1,500 and $1,800 for, depending on what kind of foundation the building has.
Ms. Riyad, you're close to your 5 minutes, so you need to wrap it up.
Well, I had a lot more to share, but I guess I wanted to make sure that if the city does stick with the IECC 2009, I went to a code conference in 2015 that ForCore sponsored here, and the code consultant indicated that if you adopt a code from a different family, a version that's different from the current family, you're going to have gaps, overlaps, and conflicts between the building code and the energy code. And if, since my time is short, I guess I want to say that I want the city to adopt the IECC 2015 to stay consistent. But if you don't, I want you to do an analysis to show what gaps and conflicts are going to be existing for the building community by adopting from those different family codes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riyad.
Travis Oliger, 620 Sandridge Court. Thanks, Mayor White and City Council, for having us here tonight. I own a heating and air conditioning company here in town. It's one of the larger ones. We are currently capable of keeping up, the wrong word, with the 2015 codes. I have spoken with several of my competitors, some of the smaller ones and some of the larger ones. The in-house requirements for heat losses, duct designs, the engineering, the documentation is something that they have expressed to me is not something that they are willing to or can do in-house. So for us, the new codes are wonderful. They expand our product line. They're going to limit our competition. Currently, well, not currently, but the way we get competition in Durango is we have a talented employee that's driven, smart. They learn our clientele. They develop relationships with our suppliers. And at some point, they split off on their own and they're a competitor. That's going to be extremely hard for a small guy or a small company to do at this point. What will happen is they will have they will hire engineers to do that part of the job for them. Again, this will be a great advantage for us, but it will raise the cost of housing. Anytime something is engineered, it's going to cost more. When somebody mentioned earlier that they recommend that you give 6 months for the building community to adjust, all they really have to do is adjust their prices and find people to take care of the work for them. It's going to make it extremely hard to start and run a business as a small company. It'll be a great advantage for the large companies. I have 35 employees currently. 2 of them live in Durango. Most of them live in Ignacio, Bayfield, Cortez, and Farmington. My son is 4th generation here, just bought a house in Aztec. And he has a twin brother, and his twin brother's looking at me saying, "Dad, I want to stay in Durango." I don't know how he can possibly pull it off, you know? Buying a home in this town already is extremely hard. I would urge you to try to keep continuity with the county. It's very difficult as it is. to keep up with things and to provide a competitive price for your product. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your perspective.
Mayor White, members of the council, my name is Tim Gallagher. I live at 500 Sand Ridge Court. I'm an old retired firefighter, moved here several years ago, loving it, but I got bored and decided I wanted to start doing what I've done for a long time, and that was build affordable housing. Because I heard so much news of the need for affordable housing. So I decided to go out and talk to the builders, the realtors, the bankers in La Plata County and Durango, ask them their thoughts. Very quickly, I drove west on 160. Did the same with the folks over in Montezuma County and Cortez. Same folks, got different answers. Asked them all, what's your idea of affordable housing? That's an interesting word. What's your idea of affordable housing over here? Just about to the individual, they told me, if you can keep the price point at $200,000 or below, you can do something about it. Good luck with that, okay? Well, the fact is I've done it. I've done it several times in the last year. In the last year, I've sold 3 homes, brand new, nice homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot, one 1,600 square foot another, for under $200,000. Now, there are several reasons I've been able to do that. But when it comes down to somebody like myself, a one-man band, trying to make a little bit of money on his efforts, when it comes down to that price point, we're talking about upgrades and options. If you want better carpeting, you want better appliances, you want a tin roof, you want this, you want that, it's going to cost you more. Options. What I'm here to suggest to you is please consider that at this point right now, affordable housing, if we impose any more restrictions or anything else that is going to increase the cost of a house to the end user, we're putting a lot of people out of a home that otherwise might be able to afford it. If we leave those sorts of things, non-public safety related issues, in the option category of best practice, as a builder, I'd inform them, here are your options. If you want upgraded windows, upgraded insulation package, it's going to cost you this much more, that much more, and so on. If we leave it as an option, the individual owner gets to decide. If you impose that upon us, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for somebody like myself to provide truly affordable housing for our citizens. So again, I ask you to consider this. Please stick with the continuity of what the county's got 2009, and let's make 2015 an option for them for now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Good evening. My name is Monique DeGiorgio, and I'm the Managing Director of Local First. Our office is at 1309 East 3rd Ave in Durango. As you know, Local First is a 501c6 trade association of locally owned independent businesses and organizations working together to build an economy that values people, the planet, and prosperity for everyone. We represent approximately 240 business members in La Plata County, Colorado. First, I would like to thank the City Council for your thoughtful and engaging response to our presentation of the support that exists for setting goals to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050, with 80% of that energy produced locally by 2030. I also want to thank you for bringing this support and a request on how we will achieve this goal to the La Plata Electric Association Board of Directors in October. As we've talked about before, buying or shopping locally includes buying local energy. The consideration of energy efficiency in residential building codes is a solid first step in achieving local renewable energy goals, as it provides a means to ensure that we are as efficient as possible with our energy consumption. And it reduces our energy costs over time in the long term. Energy conservation will reduce our overall energy demand in the long term and make local renewable energy goals more readily achievable. Local First supports the adoption of energy efficiency building codes as one step in a complex matrix of actions that we can take together as a community to secure our energy independence and keep dollars recirculating locally. Local First supports the 4-core letter that was written on this topic and was submitted to you for consideration. I will not recount the details of that letter, but in short, we support 4-core's comments that, number 1, low-income families and residents that are most in need of energy-efficient upgrades will benefit significantly by saving hundreds of dollars annually in the long term. The financial return on an energy-efficient home is always positive and recoups outlays within 1 to 2 years. Positive outcomes of better energy-efficient codes includes creating jobs for subcontractors, from insulation providers, weatherization companies, auditors, solar installers, electricians, and more. The initial short-term costs can be balanced and ultimately outweighed by the long-term gains of adopting energy efficiency building codes that are ultimately economically beneficial to our community. And finally, to reiterate once again, the energy efficiency requirements promoted in the new 2015 standards will aid the city in achieving the local renewable energy goals recently articulated by both the business community and the public at large. Thank you for the time to speak this evening, and I would ask that you consider adopting the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giorgio.
Councillors, my name is Werner Heiber. I live on 935 Clovis Drive in Durango. Before I start my own comments, I have a question. I'm also on 4-core board. Did you receive the letter by Laurie Dixon?
Yes.
And you have read it?
Yes.
Okay. My own comments are regarding the 2015 IEC. This is really investment in the future. Conservation always pays down the road. While you pay initially right now X amount more, it has been demonstrated 2015 code that in the long term we will save money. And just to give you an idea, I have built my own background. 1973, 74, I built the first passive solar house. 22 years ago, I worked on an energy efficient demonstration house in Utah. Then I was involved with Hartwood Co-housing 20 years ago, where we built energy efficient housing. I built Strawville houses. I worked for Colorado Housing for several years, 4 years, where we built affordable houses, truly affordable houses. That was a USDA supported program for $125,000 to $135,000. And I'm very aware and in tune with the needs of low-income people. I'm also have been on a 4-core board now for 8 years. And a house is a long-term investment. You cannot just look at it right now at building cost. You have to look at it. What is the cost over time? And cost over time demonstrates over and over again that an efficient house based to code is more cost efficient, energy efficient house. It's safer and it's healthier. I don't want to repeat what other people have said. Cost efficient, affordable houses can be built are built or kept efficient pending the process and repeating of models. If we build one house at a time, it's never as cost efficient, and it's very challenging to keep it than when you build several houses or you build a small development. That's what we have done before with CHI. We built 4 to 6 to 8 houses at a time. The greatest cost, the greatest challenge in our region is land. So if you make land available, or together with the county, with land trusts, that will truly bring down housing costs. I also talked to builders. The cost of building a house to the 2015 code is not much more than it is to the 209 code. So I really urge you, as you plan for the future, as you plan with water, with sewer, with transportation, with infrastructure, as a city, as you plan for the future, the adoption of the 2015 code is the same, built on the same concept, on the same needs. It will keep houses affordable, because one of the greatest costs and challenges for people living in houses are to be able to afford ongoing costs. That's energy, for example. That's the biggest cost. Low-income families pay as much as 30 to 40% of their income in energy costs alone. So I urge you, for future generations, and based on the seventh principle, we live in the southwest of Colorado, where we have neighboring tribes. Based on the seventh principle, think 7 generations in the future and look at the impact your decisions have today on future generations. So I thank you. And also want to thank you, I forgot that early comment, for your commitment that you're demonstrating to address climate change, to address the needs of the community in a progressive manner. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Heiber.
Joe Lewandowski, 708 O'Brien Drive, number 2. And I hope it's not irony that we had the air conditioning come on and then the heat come on right afterward.
Speaking of buildings built to old standards.
Exactly. This is a perfect think globally, act locally issue. I'm asking you to go ahead and be a leader in Southwest Colorado and indeed the nation and engage the the 2015 energy standards. You know, everyone complains about regulations until they like them. Regulations brought us cleaner water, better cars, cleaner air. I could go on, and of course, better homes. This regulation is the best way to cut global warming, is saving energy now. A lot of people say, gosh, little old Durango, what can we do? Well, it takes, you know, it's the old saying of how to eat an elephant. One bite at a time. And we have to take one bite of this as a way to take an initial bite out of energy consumption. You know, Durango is an environmental leader, is recognized as an environmental leader. It's one of the reasons I live here. And I think we need to stay on that course. I'd like to address the affordability issue. I can guarantee you that the housing costs in San Francisco Bay Area have nothing to do with their building regulations. It is an incredibly vibrant economy, and there are many, many other forces that drive the home prices there, just as they do in Durango. I did a quick from city staff, looking at fees, $17,000. I think an average house now is what, $450,000. So that's less than 5% of the cost of a house are our fees. It seems to be a pretty good deal to be able to live in a place like Durango. So I think it's a scare tactic. I moved to Colorado in 1977. Anyone want to guess what the hot topic then was? Affordable housing. It's 2017, over 40 years later. We have 3 times as many people in the state. People are pouring into Colorado, and affordable housing is still the issue. It's not going away, and cutting down any fees or any additional fees to make more efficient houses is not going to drive people away. Just another example on $350,000 loan between that and the, say, it costs $5,000 to do energy efficiency. So $355,000 loan, it's about $35 a month. Now with energy efficiency, that savings should come right out. So there's not going to be, it's a wash, however you look at it. Global warming, is real, and unless communities like ours start taking a look at and start doing things on a small scale, it's always easy for us to say that we shouldn't do something like this. But I think this is a really important issue, and again, I urge you to adopt the 2015 code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewandowski.
Can we get more energy efficient?
You have to wear a sweater and
sometimes
you have to switch.
Good evening, Mayor White and Council. My name is Kate Middleton. I'm with the Home Builders Association of Southwest Colorado. Over the past 2.5 years, citizens of Durango and La Plata County have heard about, felt, defeated, and or experienced no less than 24 renewed tax, new fees, new taxes, failed taxes that may come back, impact fees, taxes in consideration, non-taxes that affect housing costs, and future mills and sales taxes. This is what we call the creeping normalcy. We've heard all of the statements that the 2015 IECC will provide increased energy conservation and that the cost of these improvements will benefit homeowners in the form of utility bill reductions to offset the increased cost of the mortgage. However, higher regulatory costs have real consequences for working families in Colorado. These regulations end up pushing up the price of housing beyond the means of many of our teachers, police officers, firefighters, your city workers, and other middle-class workers. When new housing prices escalate, they drive up comps on existing inventories, which affect the first-time homeowners as well. In Colorado, and these are last year's numbers, 754,259 families could not afford to buy a home costing more than the median home price of $365,326. Every $838 increase in construction costs adds an additional $1,000 to the final price of the home. And in Colorado, 27 and 32 households would no longer qualify for a mortgage based upon a $1,000 increase to a medium-priced home. We have a unique opportunity before us for the city, the county, and the building industry to come together in the next couple of years and review the 2018 IECC and custom tailor that code to our community's needs. We'd like to weigh in on the issues of affordability and energy conservation needs at that time, sitting together at the same table, discussing what would be good for our community and our needs. Just on another note, I'd just like to address the irony that a few minutes ago the AC was blasting full blast while we're talking about energy conservation codes, and I'm watching codes come on every person in this room. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time and ask that you would consider staying with the 9 until we can come together as a community and address the needs going forward with the 2018 code. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton.
David Peters, I live at 10 Kennebec Court. You know, I really haven't studied this issue very much, but one thing I will say is that, you know, it's fine to have codes for safety issues, whether it's electrical or structural, but, you know, when you get into the areas of insulation and things like that, why can't consumers choose what they want? We already have regulations for power plants, etc. I understand the other arguments. But another thing is, I'm an engineer by degree and done a lot on economics, and you look at how we heat our homes here in Durango, and most all of us use natural gas. And I've looked all across the country. This is about the cheapest natural gas there is. And when my water heater went out and I decided whether I was going to go with another regular efficiency or high efficiency water heater, I couldn't even justify that. So you kind of got to take a look at where you are in the country. Now, if you're in San Francisco and you're paying through the nose through natural gas, I mean, it makes a lot of economic sense. You really shouldn't have to have government regulations to force you to do the right things, but, you know, take that into consideration. And you know, we can all sit here and argue how much these codes cost for increase of home costs, but they do cost, and, you know, all these things add up to low-income people, and you know, you add them all up, and it just hurts. And you know, I'm all for fighting climate change. Don't get me wrong. If you want to go out to Washington, D.C., I'll be right beside you and ask for something that's significant and real. I'll ask for a $2 per gallon gasoline tax. And I know a lot of people hate me for that, but you want to talk about effective, that would do it right now. It would do a lot more than kind of hurting poor people here with something they ought to be able to choose. Thank you.
Well, that's a historic moment. We need to document the date that when Mr. Peters talked about a tax.
I'm all for it. It'll kill Europe. It'll kill Europe.
Yeah. Thanks for your comments.
Mayor White?
Yep.
My name is Steve Scott, and I live at 1700 County Road 203 here in Durango. I'm Vice President of the Home Builders Association, and I really appreciate the time that you guys are taking tonight to kind of listen to some of the public comment. Really do appreciate it. I'm also a banker here in Durango, and been so for a number of years, involved with mortgages, commercial loans, underwriting. I look at some of the issues when it comes to affordable housing, or raising the cost of housing, or raising the cost of a loan as something that's it's a very serious thing, because the things that took place in the regulations that were stepped up as a result of the housing debacle in 2008 and 9 caused some real issues with our industry. There's a regulation called Dodd-Frank that many people are aware of that have actually raised the standards for people to qualify for homes and to qualify for loans. Oftentimes these loans are, when we underwrite them, they come into a situation where literally $100 or $200 might make the difference in a loan amount, whether they can actually qualify or not. There's a 43% debt-to-income ratio that's required for underwriting loans. We can't go around that. So anytime we add any additional expense to the cost of a home, the cost of a loan, it impacts people. The bank that I work at has over 100 people that work at the bank. And you know, most of our people are middle class. A lot of our tellers are making, you know, above the working or the living wage, but it's still very, very hard for them to afford homes here. And I moved here from Denver a number of years ago, and it's difficult at my level to try to come in as a manager in this bank, actually to be able to qualify for some of the homes that are available here. So especially in the new construction, when you I think we're looking at just the edge of what the true costs are, because we don't really know yet. And I think that's what we really are trying to get to, is what are those costs? Is it more than just a blower door test? Is it additional insulation? It's the engineering of the HVAC systems and the glazing of the windows. And I think that we need the time to look at some of those things, or to be able to really assess what the costs here in Durango are going to be versus what the costs are going to be on the Front Range. And I just think that that's something that we need to continue to look at. And if we can, you know, stick with the 2009 at this point, I think is prudent for us. I think we've met with the county, and the county is also sticking with the 2009. We're moving up to the 2009. Many of our builders are working right across the street from a county line. And to ask that builder then to be able to step up with these codes and say, oh, on this side of the road, we're at 2015. On that side of the road, we're at 2009. I think it sort of creates another issue for the builder that oftentimes is just a small one bucket guy that has subs working for him. So anyway, I appreciate the time. And if I had any questions later, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Vogelai. I live at 1038 East 4th Avenue. I spoke at the last council meeting. I'm the president of the Home Builders Association. I'm going to speak on behalf of my association as well. Plus, I'm a local builder, and I certainly have concerns. One of the major concerns that I have, and this came up with the adoption of the 09 code with the county, is the requirements that your own staff is going to have. Reading through a lot of my builder publications, talking with other builders, meeting this 2015 code is going to require a lot of work, not only on the builder, but on your staff. There's basically 3 ways that you can meet the current 2015 code. There's the prescriptive method, which is basically reading the code line by line. Going that way, there's the performance method, which uses ResCheck software to trade off calculations for acceptable insulation, windows, fenestration, heating systems, etc. And then there's also the Energy Rating Index, also known as the HERS, the Home Energy Rating System. One of the major concerns with the county is that they don't have the staff, they don't have the time. I believe your staff is going to meet the same challenges if you were to adopt the 15. Not only is the building community not ready, I don't think you're ready as a city council. Your departments are not ready. I do not see 6 months being a timely period to get ready for this. I think you're going to be inundated with builders. You're going to be inundated with the guy who's trying to build a home himself coming in and wanting to sit down and take your time for 3-5 hours going, tell me more about this prescriptive method. Okay, what's this performance? What's the trade-off? What does this fenestration package mean? What does this insulation package mean? I'm a builder. I have a construction management background. I don't understand a lot of the trade-offs. It is very high intellect stuff. You are going to have to hire, as Travis with his HVAC company, not only are you going to have to do the blower door tests, which are $1,200, $1,500 is what we're currently seeing given size of homes. Not to mention, if you were to fail one of those blower door tests, you have to have it re-inspected. So odds are, I've done this before. We built a very high quality home. We failed 2-3 times before on a single residence. 1,500 times 3, I mean, this is adding up quickly. If you're going to have to hire an outside energy rater to do any of these HERS systems, those guys aren't cheap either. The engineering on that alone is $1,000 to $1,200 on a typical 1,600 to 1,800, 2,000 square foot home. In all, you spoke last time that the building industry was wanting to come to the table and come prepared. We've made that offer. We would like to sit down with the city, with the county in the upcoming years to get ready for the 2018. And the research that I have done for the 18, it is a little more cut and dry. Certainly the 15 is easier to understand than the 12, but the 18 supposedly is going to make it more efficient for the builder, for the city, for the code enforcers to understand it. At this point, we're not ready as a community. As Travis said again, it's going to hurt the small business guys. I have 33 people on staff at my company. I would say only 7 of us live in the county of Durango, or La Plata County, and probably 3 of us live within city limits. And, you know, that hurts when you are trying to hire a carpenter and they are coming from Aztec, they're coming from Farmington. You're paying them better, you know, than living wage to be a laborer in our community and build these fine houses. And we just keep adding and adding and adding to the cost of the house, which is kind of a slap in the face to the guy who can't afford that. Yet he's busting his ass day in, day out to build that for the people of our community. So please, as Katie mentioned, the creeping normalcy is what scares the building community. It scares the realtors. Overall, please follow the county suit and stay on the 2009 Energy Code. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Charles Shaw. I live at 1309 East 3rd Avenue here in Durango. And let's see, I run a large commercial building, and so I have a lot of maintenance and energy costs. I've been a builder for 30 years. I'm a plumbing contractor and heating contractor. So I'm coming at this from a few different sides, and I really want to encourage you to adopt this new code and to adopt any future energy performance codes that come along as soon as they're available. I think these builders are selling themselves short. This stuff is not that hard. People can do this. They're doing it all over the country. You guys are sharp. And it's not that complicated. And so anyone can learn that. So I guess every community that adopts this faces our same issues of affordable housing and the labor pool and the contractors and having to spend some time to learn this stuff. But it's just not that difficult, and it's just part of what we need to do. We've been learning and evolving and moving forward on this stuff forever, and let's keep doing it. Again, I don't want to reiterate a lot of the points that people have made here, but from what everyone has said, I don't even see these as a cost. It's really, you have to invest in it up front, but it's really a cost savings. I think I heard some figure that Nicole brought up, that there was a possible 6-year payback. I've heard it as low as 2-year payback. I mean, that's a pretty good investment. There's not that many investments out there where you're guaranteed after 6 years to be making money on this thing. I mean, I would jump at the chance for that. I run a big building, and we've spent a lot of time making it energy efficient, and it's really paying off for us now, big time. And someone here was talking about gas prices being cheap. Yeah, they're cheap now, but they're at historic lows. They've been way higher in Durango, and they're going to be higher again. So, and we're in a building boom right now. This is the time to do it. Now, we're not hurting. This is as good as it gets, everybody. It really is. There's hard times ahead, just like there's been in the past, but these aren't them. Let's use this time to adopt these things and move forward as a community. And really, if we don't do it, who is? I mean, why can these other communities do it and we can't? Who is going to step up? And I mean, if we don't pull this whole climate thing off, you know, it's not going to work out for any of us. So I'm thinking if Durango can't do it, I'm feeling pretty hopeless that we can pull this off. So I really encourage you to do this and whatever else you can. And this obviously will help. I'm not exactly familiar with what you agreed to with the 100% renewable energy, but of course this will make that job a lot easier. And so I just encourage you to do that. And thanks for listening.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the council at this point? In that case, I would ask if the council has questions they have for any of the speakers.
I do. Yeah, I have to organize my notes here. I don't think I've taken this many notes in a public testimony so far, so thank you all for all of the information that you shared. You know, we heard from our affordable housing community, and I wanted to ask Ms. Bloomquist-Palmer, you alluded to the increase in cost of the homes having an impact on your clientele, and we certainly turn to you for information about that specific part of our community. And I wanted to see if you could give us a sense, much like Mr. Scott did. You know, he said some of these loans hedge on a hundreds of dollars difference, and I wondered if you could give us kind of a sense of the accuracy of that with your clientele.
Sure, I'm not sure if I needed to come up to answer that question or...
That's great. For everyone's benefit, we need anyone who speaks to come up to the podium, because that way your voices will be caught on the recording. Otherwise, the folks who are watching at home on the video or want to watch the rebroadcast of this will not know what you said. We might be able to hear you, but to ensure that everyone does, please come up to the podium.
I'd say yes, $100 a month does matter to people, especially low-income households. You know, if you are if you're a household that is making $30,000 a year, $100 a month makes a very, very big difference. And you know, I kept on hearing people say, like, yes, you can make it up over time, and I understand that. But we're talking about people who don't have the upfront money to be buying a $450,000 house or a $365,000 house.
Can I clarify where $100 a month comes from?
I think that was part of Councilman 15's question that he was saying.
Well, to be clear,
I can't imagine that a $1,000 investment equals $100 a month in a 30-year mortgage.
Just to be clear for your purposes, I think my question is do you have any sense, and it obviously you're gonna have to generalize, but do you have any sense with somebody who you're working with who's going through your program and needs down payment assistance? You know, what are those tolerances? We're talking about, thousands of dollars in terms of some of this engineering and the tests and the inspections and so forth. Does that eliminate a substantial entry for a substantial portion of your clientele?
I have to generalize, of course.
Yeah.
And certainly for some households, the answer is going to be, no, this won't bump them out. But for some households, the answer is yes, it will bump them out. We're dealing with kind of the Venn diagram of, people need to be under our income limits in order to qualify for our program. They need to make enough money to qualify for a first mortgage. They need to make enough money to be able to afford a house in this community. And that window is very, very, very small. And anything that we do to increase the cost of housing is going to make that window even smaller. For the households, I mean, we're talking about our working families right now. We're talking about households that make about $50,000 a year. Let's say, one person works at a coffee shop and the other is paramedic. That type of household, our working families. And yes, we do risk bumping them out by adding more costs. When we're talking about 43% debt to income ratios, and that leaves very precious little for people to spend on anything else, whether that be Christmas presents for their kids, or gas in their car, or health insurance, or really anything else. So, increasing housing costs are weighing on the middle class, and yes, it's decreasing that window.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But while you're up here, sure. Let's see, Mr. Gallagher talked about choices. We showed options, and so for the same debate, we as a council have, we just supported a mill levy increase for fire protection. We're going to have another fee increase for $900 and whatever dollars for the fire department that we're being asked to impose on this same clientele that you have. So if for your choice between something that paid for itself or something just went out the door, as an organization such as the Homes Fund, what would you support?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
I'm saying we've got a lot of fees, right, as Mr. Peters would suggest as well, impact fees of various kinds. We got we've been shown what a permit cost for this for a home would cost. And so I'm just trying to get to, what's the most important? Is it something that helps that person save money over the 30-year lifetime for a mortgage that you would support, or for a one-time hit that creates some nebulous opportunity for either the city, another governing body, or, in terms of do you not see this as an important fee or opportunity for your clients to save money?
Yes and no. I think programs like the Homes Fund help to overcome some of the upfront costs that are associated with home ownership. And, you know,
Let me put it
continuing
this way.
having programs like Homes Fund can help to overcome some of those burdens of the upfront costs, so that people can have savings over the long term. But the fact is, like I was just saying to Councilman Bettine, like it's a very, very narrow window, and people who are just slightly outside of the window are going to get hit. They will neither have the money to put down up front. They won't have the money to put down up front in order to recoup those savings later. And, you know, again, these are people who are part of our workforce. They're people who are in the middle class and just struggling to stay in the middle class.
So in your position as director of the Homes Fund, and Mr. Scott is a banker as well, do you have any criteria for qualification of the mortgages that you're authorizing that have a certain amount of energy savings built into the mortgage that you're going to approve or not approve? In other words, are these people going to save money over time, as has been demonstrated and certainly has been illustrated by a number of folks here tonight, talking about how this is a 2 or maximum 4-year payback for whatever investment you're putting into this structure over the life cycle of costing, and it's going to save your client money over time. Do you not analyze that when you approve a mortgage?
That is not currently part of our underwriting procedures.
Yeah.
For commercial affordable housing.
Well, for that person that's got a $100 a month increment, when it's that fine of an increment as you're stating, why not?
Well, and I mean, I would also counter by saying, why not take into account the gas that they're spending money on when they're driving in from Aztec? You know, I mean, like all of these factors work together, and certainly for commercial affordable housing, for affordable rental housing, HUD does require that they take into account the cost of utilities as well when calculating, you know, the percentage of someone's income that can go toward housing expenses. You know, if we drive up costs in one area, I just fear that that's, like I said in my testimony, I fear that that's going to push people into costs in other areas. And I think that those other areas of costs are going to be more driving. I think that we should, you know, look at what we want to encourage and what we want to discourage. And one of the things that we want to discourage is people driving till they qualify. And our costs of housing are unfortunately, that's the reality right now. And yes, it is complex. You know, it's not, I'm not saying that it's just our environmental regulations. There are all sorts of things that go into that go into our high housing costs. But, you know, let's try and chip away at, I think, lowering those costs and bringing in developers and attracting developers, whether that be of affordable housing or just any type of housing, so that we get more supply.
Did you have more questions?
No, not of Ms.
Sorry, I've been on a little.
Sorry, Melissa, do you have another question? I do have a question. Or maybe it's more of a statement than a question. But of all of the creeping fees and costs that we're talking about, you know, the fire department has asked us for an impact fee so that they, on the long term, they can provide fire and emergency services to the residents in the new houses. The city has long since had impact fees so that we can take care of the streets and provide services to the new residents. Without those impact fees, all of our residents are going to be paying more to serve the new people, which is not fair. And the issue here, this is the one incremental cost that actually is very clearly an investment. It is demonstrable that it pays back. Pick your return time. The number we have in our agenda docs is a 4.6 year rate of simple payback time. If you convert that into a rate of interest, it's 14%. You know, anybody with a little money to invest would jump at that. And the critical issue is, your clientele may, they're just on the edge of having that money. But if they get into this, they get, then they reap the investment. If they go into a less efficient house, they're going to pay that extra premium year after year after year. I'm really sorry that there's only one part-time banker in the room, because I think one of the issues here is, in fact, the underwriting standards and the loans. Well, HUD, it works for rentals, but it doesn't work for mortgages. And it's not within our purview to settle that larger policy issue, but we have a small one. And I think the issue here then is the net benefit. Actually, in the early days of the RHA, I remember having a conversation with one of the people, working with mortgage assistants and trying to help people in homes, and made this very clear statement. It's all about the building equity. I think that argument's somewhat gone away, but here's a case where, in fact, this really does. It increments the equity that people have once they're in a home. And so I think I guess I don't have really a question, although maybe that, where is the building equity argument in this?
Like if we could increase the amount that we can put into our mortgage assistance. I mean, we're already within the city limits offering basically $50,000. So $25,000 from the state and $25,000 from the city. If that is enough to cover that small gap of people, to cover those upfront costs, yes, I agree with you. It's going to work out better in the long run. But still, for so many households, and even those households that are slightly outside of our income ranges, or who or just don't fit within that narrow range, they just don't have that upfront money. And as nice as it would be for them to be able to invest that upfront money to get the long-term benefits, if you don't have the upfront money, you can't get the long-term benefits because you just never get in the game. And what our program is trying to do is to get people into the game. And I think we're successfully doing it, but we'll have to increase our level of assistance if housing goes up, if housing prices go up even more. I apologize. I'm trying to think exactly how I answer the equity question.
Yeah, well, I think it's really, you're addressing the issue. I mean, you're really talking, there's a threshold.
Yeah.
Where, one question that's occurring to me as you speak is, are you running out of clients?
There's...
Or is part of the issue there will be, if you're paying a little bit more, there are fewer clients that you help?
So there's a small window, really tiny window of the people that we can serve, just because housing prices are getting so high that people who are under our income limits, even with our assistance, cannot afford the homes. And so we have just kind of an ever shrinking pool, even though it's a great program. People do want to live here. If you need $100,000 to get to bridge your gap, $50,000 doesn't do you much good.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yep. Right. Well, thank you. Well, thank you first of all for the work that you're doing, and for your comments.
Likewise.
Other questions for?
I have more.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. All right. So the Home Builders Association, we have Steve, Ryan, and Kate all here. You don't all have to answer this question. Maybe you can nominate somebody that would, but should we decide to stick with the 2009 code as you requested? All of you somewhat alluded to the idea that we would get together with the city and form a plan. I'd like to know if you have a sense of what that time frame is, because that you think that your building community can adopt the current 2015 plan. You know, what is a reasonable time frame? Everyone said the 6 months is a reasonable time frame, and everyone has said that that they need more time. I'm curious if anybody is still here to answer that question.
You know, first and foremost, I think there has to be some sort of resolution, some sort of conference with the city and the county to sit down and say, yes, we are going to do this. And then I think that will prompt energy standards and the different groups locally, the Home Builders Association being one, to come together. When this came about in 2015, no one ever made that next step. The city didn't, the county didn't, so the home builders.
How would that have been different if we had been doing this 1 year ago, which is what we pledged to do in 2015? Where would and in 2015, the Home Builders Association, including one of the leading green builders in town, came in here and said, we're not ready, but we're going to educate our membership, and a year from now, we'll be ready. Then nobody came.
The Association put on in 2009 IECC training at the rec center. I think there were 2 training periods, pretty heavily attended. I don't know the exact, but I think we used 2 or 3 of the rooms at the rec center. That was, I believe, in February of 2015. So immediately, because this was presented, we got on board. We have not seen the city and county come together and come to us and approach us about any sort of resolution. That's where we're looking as an industry. We are willing to come to the table. We just went through this with the county and had multiple work sessions where probably 10 to 20 of our industry professionals sat down with the different building inspectors, plan inspector at the county, had multiple county commissioner meetings where we attended and viewed all this. We haven't had the chance and the platform really to do this with the city. We would love the city and county to come together and do that, get the 2 different building departments in the same room, come together on an agreement.
Right.
And when can we?
In fact, you know, because for the benefit of the new counselors, I mean, we were exactly at this point 3 years ago, and we deferred, stated our case eloquently, I thought, after the mayor suggested that, you know, we stated our case then, and it hasn't been changed, that we had intended to adopt this code a year ago, and waiting for the county. The county then, you did your job, we did our job, you did your job, and the county went on to do their job and ended with this result. So here we are with our stated goals from 3 years ago, saying we were going to adopt this code last year, waiting for the county to come to the table. They came to the table, they made their decision. I don't know what else we need to do to come together on this thing. I mean, we voiced our opinion. They went a different direction, quite honestly. You were part of that. But somewhere at the top of the list, it sure said the city is going this direction when the county was having their conversation. They are the people that have deviated from what was stated was going to happen 3 years ago. And here we are expected to wait another 3 years till somebody catches up, or there's this big kumbaya. It's not going to happen unless somebody takes a lead. So, and you guys did your job. I respect that a lot. It was very good training that was put on by the Home Builders Association, but I don't want to be sitting here another 3 years from now going, you know, we haven't adopted a code since, you know, Cortez is ahead of us. Pagosa is ahead of us.
So back
Cortez is not ahead of us, by the way, but that's just but Pagosa is, Walsenburger is, you know, many other mountain towns have figured out how to do this. I just got a permit in Kalispell, Montana, just last week. I submitted a res check, 2015 code. It took the building inspector about 5 minutes to read it, give the permit, and it was done. It was not an onerous situation. It was just a res check, as one of those things that you've stated eloquently that is one of the 3 methods that you can get through this process. It's not rocket science. And so, you know, I just don't want to be sitting here 3 years from now Councilor Patine.
If you've done the trainings, then back to the question, how long do you think it would take? Is 6 months enough? I mean, the amendment would suggest it wouldn't be implemented until July 1, 2018.
One of the biggest differences between the 9 and then now the 15, and we keep alluding to, is this blower door test. There are only 2 people in town currently. Sure, we can call somebody out of Albuquerque or Santa Fe, larger metropolitan area, to come in to do those tests. We have got to get other people on board with this, other subcontractors. 6 months, talking with like Travis from GARS, I mean, they're at least a year, likely. I mean, it's somewhat of a tough question. I kind of wish maybe the planning departments or the building departments could speak to that, because I don't think they're going to have the time in 6 months to train their staffs to get there. So I don't have a clear answer for you.
Is it primarily this blower test and the fact that there are only 2 people in town? Because I've heard from quite a few people that it's not that onerous. But is it this issue of the fact that 2 people provide this testing?
That's not the only point that we're making about this. Like I said, I mean, there's basically the 3 different methods. Certainly we have our concerns, you know. I can't say that the blower door test is the straw that broke the back on this thing or anything like that. Our biggest fear that we keep going back to is just the creeping normalcy.
Can I ask you?
I'm sorry.
Are we going to have a similar discussion when it comes in a couple of weeks when we talk about the
land use code?
No, the fire department impact fee.
We've submitted the fees to you guys. That's the biggest concern, is the home building industry. It's the rising costs. It's from the affordable housing, those costs rising, to cost of housing rising across the board, to where it really doesn't matter what the cost of new construction is going to be. The cost of the 95% of the other homes in the county are going to rise too. Forget about the energy code. Forget about the cost of new construction. What are just the rising costs are going to do in this town? You're not going to have attainable workforce here. You're not going to have carpenters. You're not going to have builders. You're not going to have firefighters that can afford to live here. These costs are something that, like I said, I have 33 people at my company, Kogan Builders. We are a very high-end builder. We build top-notch homes. Like I said, I think I only have 3 employees that live in the city that can really afford it. I've got guys driving from west of Cortez Airport coming here to work. They don't have jobs in Cortez. We have good homes here that they can build that they know they can be on for 6-8 months. Great, we're giving them a paycheck, but I'm paying them to drive 65 miles a day.
We fully understand that, and that's the whack-a-mole of this whole situation. And I
we're
totally
looking
agree.
out not just for the home builders.
So I think
we're looking out for our community, because we care about the people that live here.
That's why I want to give them a higher quality of house, and I think you do too.
And I think one of the one distinction, as I said a little bit earlier, this is one incremental cost that pays the buyer back. You know, and the other fees, as we said, there are rationale. And then, as you alluded to, there's the external drivers. We have the benefit of living in a really, really attractive place. And one of the reasons that it is so attractive is that we've done very well as a city in making it an attractive place. We'll be going through a process over the next 6 months of talking to the community about the costs of the government that we're providing and how we can go forward, because speaking of inability to afford, we just got an award tonight for our police department, who are working out of manifestly substandard quarters. We all suffered tonight because of and we're probably not done yet in terms of heat and cool system in a 60-year-old building. All of, and building costs affect everything. They affect everyone. What we're striving for is a vision as a community to find one step that we can take that will, in fact, provide some long-term benefit, even though this is one that, like many others, is causing short-term difficulty. I want to thank you for your input. Unless there's anyone else, any other questions from the council on for you. Thank you.
Have you closed the public hearing?
I have not, because we're still asking questions of some of the speakers. Does anyone else have questions that we'd like to bring back?
I only wanted to ask the banker a question.
Mr. Scott.
Mr. Scott. Thank you so much. We've heard from people who advocate for the 2015, and we've heard from Lisa, who deals with folks trying to get into, a house. My question to you as a banker, how many people do you have to turn down because they can't afford, they're not going to make the guidelines? Can you give me a ballpark?
Well, it's sort of tough. I mean, I'm a credit manager, and I work, in the commercial world, and then I was a construction lender at one time. Unfortunately, with Dodd-Frank's, the regulations don't allow for any real give in the process. So, and I would guess, at our bank, we're probably in a situation where, there may be 15 to 20% of people that apply for loans don't qualify.
Just don't qualify.
Just don't qualify.
They just don't have the money to get in.
Right. Again, we didn't make the rules. I think the banking and the real estate world created a problem a number of years ago, and the government came in and fixed it. It also made it very rigid. So unfortunately, we're not able to underwrite to additional cost savings that may come from energy. I mean, we just don't have that in our wheelhouse. But I think what we're trying to do as a group that are speaking of this is, and I say it again, I'm just not sure that we know exactly where the cost and what the cost will be in the implementation. I've been in a couple meetings, one with the fellow from GARS, and there's some large numbers thrown out, and I'm not a builder, but they have to do with calculating the R values on, from the outside of the building inside, and and I'm not an architect either, but at the same time, we're not sure exactly where all those costs are, but what they're going to wind up being. So it's not just a blower door test. It's not just windows. It's not just the engineering of the system. And so that's where I don't know for sure. But sometimes that incremental cost that comes in, and it's true if you take a cost that's $10,000 and you put it into a loan and you amortize it for 30 years, it's not very much, unless that loan amount causes you not to be able to qualify for a loan. And that's the point is, if you can't get into the house, then you're not going to build equity. You're not going to be able to do what you really are, what we're talking about here, and yet we all understand that the environment's important. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, we don't know exactly where we're going yet with some of these costs, I think, is what my understanding of it is. So.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Is it possible to ask a city staff additional questions at some point?
Yeah, I think we can do that after we've, if we will. I think we're exhausting the public in more ways than one. Does council have any other questions for people who have testified?
No.
No. In that case, I will close the public hearing and invite Councilor Youssef to pose a question to staff.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that you guys have done in your review And I was wondering if, after you've heard these discussions tonight, if you can creatively think of any innovative middle ground. You suggested a 6-month waiting period initially if we were to move to the 2015 codes. Could we agree to something such that, something different? What if we reevaluated in June and at that time had the time to even look at the 2018 codes, which I heard reference to tonight, within this next 6-month period of time, reevaluated the 2015 codes versus the 2018 codes to determine if, in fact, the 2018 codes had worked through some of the loopholes, and then possibly just implement at that time whatever it was. Is there, I just want to ask you as the professional staff with the background in the room, if you have any creative, innovative ways to address the situation that might meet everybody's needs.
As I had stated earlier, we have not really reviewed the 18 codes, so I couldn't do the comparison between 15 and 18.
No, but
in 6 months, yes, it's possible we could do that comparison. But going back, it's ultimately a policy decision of City Council. We will do everything we can to get our staff prepared, whatever training they need, if we implement the 15 code in July. I think the 6 months was not originally our recommendation. I think it was actually Councilor Battine's at the study session.
No. Well, no, I asked for extra time. I just thought that if we were going to do this, I said, that we couldn't do it overnight. And 6 months was floated, but it wasn't by me.
Okay.
So.
Well, I was giving you credit.
Thank you.
So, I think we're prepared. In talking with our building official, he's prepared to get up to speed as much as he can before July 1st. So ultimately, if the City Council wants us to look at 18, we can definitely do that. Do some comparisons between 18 and 15, and provide that information back to City Council. Sit down with the building industry, because they had told me that they would rather us look at the 18, but I don't know the details as to why they want us to look at the 18, so I would want to get more information from them as to what their thoughts are on the 18 code versus the 15 code. And then just do research in the industry as well. Reach out to other building professionals in the industry on 15 versus 18. And again, looking at comparisons. I didn't really do a lot of comparison research between the 15 and the 18. So yeah, we would want to educate ourselves on what that differences are, and I don't know that. But at this point, we are prepared to be ready for 6 months if council does approve it tonight.
If I can I add something to that?
Yes.
This is not the first time we've adopted new codes. We do this every 3 years. It's not, and there's always some changes. This particular change has sparked some particular controversy just because it's a different area of change. Sometimes it's structural, sometimes we've been through a series of additional insulation requirements and different roofing requirements and structural changes. Nobody complains about loading changes when, the loading requirements for a structure change because they don't know about it, but they know that they have to do this one test to get the permit. It's much more tangible for a lot of these smaller builders. But our building department has adopted, in my 38 years here, we started with the 1980 building code, or 79 building code, then it went to every 3 years. And so they've managed to figure out how to implement a new code religiously for every 3 years. And we should look at the 2018 code. I've read it. It's not that much different than this one. It doesn't change anything, it doesn't simplify anything. Makes the calculations perhaps a little bit easier, but there's nothing easier than fill out a ComCheck form. It's free. It's a computer, generated document, and you turn it into the building department. They read it, you pass or you fail. That's it.
Other point, I'd like to make one other point. Councilor Youssef's question in terms of being prepared. Right now, in Twin Buttes, they're required to meet the 15 energy code. So we've already had some level of preparation for that.
Right.
We've already issued building permits up there. And then Three Springs right now uses the HERS ratings, and so we've already been prepared through that process as well. We've been dealing with that for quite a few years.
And the
now.
HERS
So-
is 2015 as well, correct?
Well, 2015 now has sorry, I don't remember, I haven't memorized all of these, the Energy Rating Index path, which is part of that process.
Way to go.
But we've been doing HERS in Three Springs for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And so our building official is familiar with those processes already in our 2 newer developments. So it's really talking about infill development within the community. That's going to be probably the highest impact with this new code, because Three Springs and Twin Buttes are already doing their own process. They will have to make some changes in Three Springs, but Twin Buttes is already required to be on the 15, and then if we move to the 18, they're required to move up as we move up as well.
Okay.
Well, Nicole's up here. She provided Saul with a document that I requested, which was a comparison of commercial versus residential permits and valuations. So I just need to tell my fellow councilors that this code is, like Ms. Riot stated, the scope of this is for commercial construction as well as residential construction. Most of the testimony that we've heard for the past couple of weeks has been relative to mortgage rates and how we're going to create an untenable housing crisis in our community. And whereas the larger part of this code, this past year, so far to date, in the city of Durango, we've got $22 million worth of valuation in new homes. That tells me that something's happening in our community. We're creating a lot of homes.
That was for 16.
That's for,
here's 17.
2017 through October valuation is 20.
I sent them in November. And through November, we have 51 million.
And that's because,
Evaluation.
Rocket came in.
In
on the
November,
last-
Rocket came in with almost 200.
but still
And 200 units of workforce housing.
Right.
Multifamily rental.
Yeah.
And but then $31 million worth of new commercial construction. What that tells me is that, it's about, on a month-to-month basis, it fluctuates, and on a yearly basis, it fluctuates. But on a normal year, the valuation is several $1 million worth of, it's about equal. So but I would suggest in the city, compared to the county, that we're about to have a lot more commercial construction happen in our community, and will happen over time, as we're projecting some of the concepts of North Main renovation, Rocket Corridor, all the areas that we've identified for new commercial growth, and incentivize that growth via planning techniques. So it's as important to the commercial for our community as it relates to the commercial construction and the quality of commercial construction. And so for that reason alone, I think that we need to really look at this as a quality factor in our community, and how it relates to our council goals in terms of establishing the highest quality of construction, not just energy construction, healthy construction too, as was pointed out by a couple of our letters. Just get my little Ross Perot chart out for just 1 second, and I say, if you got a straight line, once you qualify for a mortgage, whatever it is, and that goes on for 30 years, and you can pay off an increment of one of the parts of that mortgage is something that's going to actually make you money, as the mayor stated. In a 2 to 4 year period, for a value that's maybe half the cost of the appliance package that you put in your house, and that's going to save you money. In my case, if my house was 20% more efficient, and I've got a $300 combined Atmos and LPEA bill, that's $60 a month in my pocket for the next 30 years. Not only for the next 30 years, that's forever. And not only the first user, but every other user. Versus the cost of energy cost. Right now, it's been, it was $145 a barrel a few years ago. Now it's back down to 60-something dollars a barrel for oil. Our energy costs are hopefully fairly stable and good, as Mr. Peters has suggested in our community, but they're not going to go down. They're going to continue to rise. And so that's your only hedge against that low-income user. That's their only hedge against the inflation of energy costs as it rises through for the next 30 years of their mortgage. And so it's the only thing that drops off. I mean, why shouldn't we ask that this investment be made by our builders in every building that's built in Durango from now on, and starting now, not in 3 years? Because that just means those poor people that didn't have this code imposed on them or on their builders today, they're going to lose out on this opportunity. It's starting now. So, and we are about to, we are in a construction boom that we will continue, and now's the time, not 3 years from now. And we can look at, and we should adopt the 2018 on the normal cycle, and we should keep the family of codes together, the 2015 together. And I stayed out of the process with the county because I didn't want to have any undue influence. Otherwise, I'd have said exactly that. Why are you not considering keeping all these codes together? Now we have Bayfield. Bayfield has adopted the 2015 code. For some of you builders that managed to work in the city and the town of Bayfield, is that going to increase their housing costs too? So all those folks are going to come running into Durango because we have a lesser code? I don't think so. Or is that going to cause you to only build in Bayfield or in Durango and not build in Bayfield anymore because you have such onerous codes out there? I don't think so. We need to have parity, and I wish the county would have adopted the entire family of 2015 codes. It only makes sense to me.
I think we've gotten into our statements, but if there are are there any other questions for staff?
Yes, one more question, please. The staff is recommending we stay with 2009. However, we've moved to 2015 the IC codes effective January of 2018. And as Mrs. Riot was saying, how does staff envision that if we were to stay with the 2009 IECC code, how would we what do you envision to be the conflicts?
I have not done the gap analysis that Ms. Riot was requesting of the city. So if that's something council wants us to look into, we can do that, but we have not done that analysis.
Okay, that was my only last question.
I would ask, not being an expert on the codes, I do know that, we've, in the ordinances that we'll be looking at later tonight, there are exceptions to each one of almost every one of the codes, because there are issues. The one I remember from our last time through this was sprinklers, where the plumbing code that the International Plumbing Code requires sprinklers at a level that I think we as a community have said this is onerous. That for, I think, mixed use up to 2 residence units, I don't remember the exact thing, we said, okay, we'll exempt those in order to facilitate this. So we do make these accommodations to the codes. It does raise the question about possible conflicts and the possibility that we may want to, it appears that, I'm trying to decide exactly what question to pose here. I think the question is, to what extent has L.V. Moore, who has been the primary, code enforcement officer here, he has gone through this with staff and the city attorney to identify, to make sure that we're not running into that.
I asked that very question of Albie because, as you recall, the discussion was we could bring back 2 options, and the one option is really do nothing and keep the 09, or keep, adopt 15. And I asked him that very question, and he said that he thought that there might be some minor revisions that would be required before the full implementation in July. But, and I don't want to speak for him, but my takeaway was that those items were relatively minor. We also changed the other codes to refer generically to an energy code, whether or not it was the 09 or the 15 code. So again, that was an attempt to give council flexibility in what they wanted to do. So I think it's safe to say that if you adopt the 15s effective July, that you may see some suggestions from the building official on some minor changes, as you suggested, between now and July.
Okay,
also, I'd like to point out that we are on the 2009 Energy Code and we were on the 2012 Code family. So our Energy Code and the rest of our Code family were not the same year for the last
okay, so we've
3
got
years.
some experience in this space.
I actually have one more question, I'm sorry.
Sure. No, by all means. I mean,
Sorry.
I think I'm trying to keep things orderly here
Yes.
so that before the council gets into general discussion
deliberate.
among ourselves, we, exhaust the questions of different folks.
I'd like to ask the question about enforcement. If we change to the 2015 IECC codes, do we have adequate staff to ensure a level playing field for all in the community, that we can actually ensure that homes are being built to that standard? Because it's one thing to just enact policy, we have to enforce it.
And I'll repeat what Mr. Berkey, Councilor Berkey has been saying is a lot of what we do is they have to provide us information that shows they passed the blower door test.
Okay.
Or meet the resident. They have to provide us that information.
Okay.
So we do have inspections, and so there are things Albie's going to have to add to his inspections. But a lot of these tests, they have to provide us the information that they've passed those tests.
And so you don't necessarily have to go out. Okay.
Well, I have a comment.
Yep.
I moved here in '74. I was lucky, but I guarantee you I couldn't afford to buy a house today as a single parent. And so the banker and the Homes Fund certainly have touched my heart, because the houses on my street I could never afford to buy. I get emotional because I ran on affordability in 2011. I was a school teacher. I know a lot of school teachers. I know a lot of bartenders. I know a lot of dishwashers in this town. And I respect everybody's opinion in this room about the need for efficiency and 2015 and, but the bottom line is if I couldn't come up with a down payment, I can't get into the house. That's the bottom line where I come from. And I see that on my street. The majority of the houses are rentals. But when they do come up for sale, I can't buy one. I'm lucky that I have my house. I'm very lucky. I'm lucky that my family has a house. But none of that was easy. So I am more concerned about the people who work here downtown. Mr. Garr said that a lot of his staff doesn't live here. So did the gentleman from the home builders. I know a lot of carpenters. And I know people that drive from Mancos, as a matter of fact, to work here. And people that drive from Cortez who work here. And it's a great place to live. That's why we're all sitting in this room, because we all want the best for our community. And I'm not saying that, I think Twin Buttes is great, but it's a high dollar place. I don't think I could afford to even get in a house in Three Springs as a single person. So I have to look at one, continuity, which I really like. And you can slam the county, but there's a reason why a lot of folks choose to live here and why a lot of folks can't live here and rent. And so I have no problem with being with the 209. I'm happy to look at the 218 later down the road. And it's what I listened to was the banker and the Homes Fund, because that's where the buck stops. Everybody who wants the 2015 codes, hey, I'm all for it. As a matter of fact, I've been pushing for solar energy on any building around here for the city of Durango. I think that's where we're headed in the future. And we had people come and talk about solar energy a few weeks ago. But in terms of just how you write that down payment, I know too many people that rent. And it's not because they don't want to buy. They just can't afford it. And if we keep adding on more and more and more, then we'll be a commuter community. And we already are a commuter community. And that doesn't promote good neighborhoods. I love the people on my block, the renters. And I love the people that live on my block that own a house. And we have a great neighborhood, but I know it's a struggle. And so I'm here to tell you, I ran as a city councilor on affordability. That was one of the issues. I'm sticking to it. So I'm okay with the 209. Obviously, we've had a big boom in development. You know, we're not hurting for commercial buildings or residential buildings. And somehow they've all survived the 209. You can shake your head out there, it's okay. I'm only one of 5 people up here, but I'm gonna speak up for the people that work in Durango and that rent and that maybe work 2 jobs, and they would love to have a house. I know that because I know them, they're my friends. But I'm okay with where we are right now. So I've kept my mouth shut, and I've said what I had to say.
Before we go on further, are there any other questions for staff?
No.
No. Councilor Youssef had asked me for the opportunity to speak early in this conversation. It's taken us a long time to get there.
It's all right. Sometimes just by the nature of where I sit, it's difficult, especially when we get passionate about our subjects. I have really appreciated the additional time to do some research on this topic. I think it's been helpful. We've had such great community input, and I really sincerely appreciate people coming forward and speaking up and taking the time out of your night. It's 9 o'clock at night, but it means a lot, and it's very helpful. So I want to thank you all for being here. It's given me a lot of time, some time to think about this issue. Like I said before, when we were initially discussing it, I had a hard time because I felt like there was some consensus at the joint Board of County Commissioner and City Council meeting. That's why I felt staff came up with their recommendation. So it threw me a little bit for a loop when we started jumping to the 2015 IECC code at the last meeting. But with more time, I've been able to kind of break it down into the issues that I think are really relevant, what I was talking about, because I too recognized that affordable housing, and I think we all recognize that affordable housing is a critically important issue in our community. It almost feels like we have dueling priorities, is what I discussed last time. But with regards to consistency, I'm not as affected by it anymore. I really wanted to be consistent for ease of operation and predictability and consistent with the county. But the fact of the matter is, if we have many of our builders already in the community doing it, that issue becomes less of importance to me. And with regards to costs, Councilor Marbury, in some ways, I was absolutely initially suggesting the same thing as you, which is it's higher costs. We can't do it. People can't get into homes. But when I actually think about my own kids and what I would want for my own kids, and when I took time to really look into this code more, and the fact that it's around testing for tightness of a home and energy efficiency, we all want airtight homes. And it actually makes me think about the renter. I mean, the renters, like you suggested, they benefit from airtight homes. So with regards to costs, we all talked about the fact that the costs are paid back over time. And ultimately, what I didn't hear, and it's interesting, is that I think that the buyer ultimately benefits later on when it comes to resale because his house has been built to a higher standard. So I believe, therefore, that these 2015 IECC codes actually look out for the best interest of the buyer in requiring energy efficient homes, making it a priority. Ultimately, the buyer benefits from reduced bills and increased home resale values. And as Mrs. Georgia suggested, these short-term costs are balanced and outweighed by the long-term gains. And in addition, it is true, it's absolutely true that while this does increase the cost a little bit, and it's difficult when we're talking about that margin of home, these are not the driving forces causing our housing market. to be so out of line in our community. It's the price of land, it's the price of building supplies, it's the price of labor. And I think that as a community, we're gonna need to get creative and innovative. If our community really wants us to address affordable housing, then we're gonna need to come up with some creative solution as a government to figure out and how to get that happened. And the community is gonna have to decide if they're gonna fund that. Lastly, with regards to the environment, I don't think, I've realized after doing the research and reading a lot that these 2015 codes are over 30% more efficient. And in thinking about our environment and the natural environment around us, I think we have the opportunity tonight to affect policy and implement change that has a direct impact on our natural environment, which gets us closer to our sustainability goals. So as difficult as this has been, I hope they aren't all this difficult. I would suggest that I'm in favor of adopting the 2015 IECC codes in looking out for the best interest of the buyer over time, as well as protecting our natural environment. That might change things, so I thought I should speak up.
Well, it might. I would have to say I generally agree with all of that. And there's been talked about, I'm not a regulatory kind of guy, but I do work in California, and I guarantee you the cost of housing in California is not, has no nexus to this code or the implementation of this code. I mean, the layers of environmental law in California that are, make this look like chump change. It really is. So, I'm sitting here, I feel like I'm in a bad movie of Reefer Madness. I mean, who has really read this thing to the hill? I mean, as Mr. Peters walking out the door said, he hadn't read it, but but probably Travis, probably Dan Feathergill, probably Michelle, probably Ryan, and myself, are the guys that have really worked with this, understand it, understand its implications and its cost impacts. And this is where we should be spending money. If we need to make $100 a month more affordable house, we should look at all the things that add up to our total palette of fees, starting with our building permit fees, starting with our plant impact fees are the most significant chunks that go into the real cost imposed by the city of Durango on a particular house. And commercial construction for that. I mean, I just have a $46,000 check for Habitat for Humanity for their new building. That's the permit fee that was issued or will be issued next week to Habitat for Humanity. $46,000 for a $2 million deal. The average cost per building permit for a house was something like $7 with the impacts. So, and then I walked in, I got a wonderful review from our fire department for $750. That was another, oops, that's a check that I wrote out there. And thank you very much. And so this is the only thing that's going to actually pay for itself in the end, the only fee. And so if we really think that we need to make housing more affordable, this is not the place to do it. We should look at our overall, and I'm not suggesting we tonight cut plant investment fees by any means. Those are already spoken for. But really, when you look at the total number of fees that go into the cost of a home, yes, this is chump change. It totally is, and it will come down, and energy costs will continue to go up, and this is the only hedge that purchaser in 2017 has to hedge against the energy cost in 2020 when I'll be mayor.
Well, I think I can count 1, 2, 3, so it's okay.
So I think plus let's talk affordability for I don't know if anybody in this room has done over 6,000 units of affordable housing, and I've done that, plus I did maybe right around 1,000 of that in California, which is not easy to do. Every one of those units got funding solely because they had energy impacts. So those are new units, those are rehab units, existing housing stock in Compton, downtown LA, Bakersfield, all kinds of different places where there's acute need for affordable housing. And none of that would have got financed had they not had, number one, energy conservation measures imposed on to allow those lowest of the lowest income to have the lowest possible energy costs associated with their host of expenditures. That's how you get affordable housing built in America. And so that's, and so when I hear it's going to jack up the cost and nobody's going to be afford anything, I mean, 6,000 families are living in affordable units today because we totally designed the most efficient units we could for those families. And thankfully, they'll be able to do that for the rest of their lives and for the rest of those units and for the rest of the life cycle cost of those buildings. And in Durango, I would say the biggest impact is going to be on our commercial component of new structures. Those new hotels, it's just not housing. This is for hotels to get the highest quality, the least energy use, and the most progressive community we can have relative to saving energy and keeping it local. I don't understand why, you know, everything that I've learned in my entire professional career says this is the right thing to do. So I'm gonna vote yes.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna take a stab at this anyways, even though the three of you are over there.
It could be a swing vote. It happens sometimes.
You never know. I just want to take a stab. I just want you to hear me out. So, you know what's really curious about this issue for me is that it's the first issue that I've sat through a public testimony and listened to all the counselors speak, saving our mayor, that I actually agreed with every single person that talked, save the one person who's already left the room who doesn't believe that small communities can have an impact in climate change. I don't believe in that one. But every other person that spoke, I think, you know, eloquently done. I agree with your points, most every one of them. I don't think this issue is about whether or not there's a return on investment for the dollars spent up front. I think that is very clear in all the research that we studied. It goes for the life of the property, which can be 100+ years or more. I think everyone's made that point. It's a solid point. But to me, that is not the key issue that we're confronting tonight. The key issue to me is timing of adopting that specific idea to go to this particular code. And I think when you listen to the home builders talk and you interview other home builders than those that we heard from tonight, the resounding message is this is a big jump. It's not a small jump. We've adopted codes over time since, according to Dean, 1980 and beyond, right? But this jump is pretty big, and it is costly, and they feel that the community is not going to be prepared for it. However, what's also interesting when you talk to them is you say, hey, we all agree that efficiency and environmental issues are critical for our future homes. You agree that you're headed in that direction because all your materials, all your methodology, everything that they talked about tonight that's incorporated in this process are going in that direction. And you want to go there. You're telling us that you're not there yet. And as a small community, we haven't reached that point. And we could debate that a lot. But one of the things the county did that we as a city, I didn't hear that we did, is they actually had work sessions specific to this adoption. They set timelines and they said, look, we're going to adopt something, we're going to go and do something, we want to hear from you about that path. And I think what I would prefer we do is, and it's why I asked Ryan the question of when can you be ready? Because I'm going to vote for this. I'm not going to vote for it tonight. I'm going to vote for this code amendment. I might vote for the 2018 instead. But I don't feel like we've embraced the people who do this work that are involved in the affordable housing initiatives in our community, that are involved in the environmental initiatives in our community at the same table to see how we can all get there at the same time. Because if we make a decision and we use our position in this city government to say you will do this and you will do it now, then all of the ancillary impacts are going to unfold, whatever they may be, and we can only predict them. We know that houses will cost more. We know it will be harder for everybody to get in homes, no matter who they are, whether it's a first-time home buyer or affordable housing unit or whatever it may be. Renters are going to pay a little bit more rent. We know that's going to be an outcome. We know that stuff. We don't know the overall impacts of our in our community. But we haven't embraced all of the stakeholders and said, how do we all get to the place that we want to go, which is to have higher efficiencies for the life of these buildings. And when I look at these numbers that Nicole provided us with in terms of building permits and commercial permits and everything else, and you think about the fact that Three Springs and Twin Buttes are our two largest developments, and they're already building to a standard that's either already there or it's very close to there, then percentage-wise, in terms of waiting a year, for example, of the number of new homes that would be built that would actually have an environmental impact over the life of the home that would be negative in our opinion, or would be costly in our opinion, would be relatively small. If you do that math, it's a small number of homes. So I'm not suggesting that we as a council don't follow our goals and ambitions and all the things that we say we want to do relative to environmental issues and relative to efficiency and cost issues. But I am suggesting that we, in this particular case, look at what the county did and embrace that same methodology and go out and look, I'm sending the shot over the bow by saying this to the Home Builders Association, but I'm saying, look, I'm going to vote for this next time. If this vote comes out tonight and we adopt 2015, I won't have to, it won't matter, but I'm going to vote for it because it's the right thing to do. We all agree, the home builders agree, but you have to get ready, and you got to get ready in a time frame that is a year. We heard Ryan say maybe it's a year, but that group could set that agenda. And I would much rather see the policy come from the people who are doing the work in our community than the 5 people up here, because candidly, Dean, I totally agree with you. You are the only expert on this panel relative to the construction industry. And I look to Dick for information about environmental issues as one of the reasons I'm interested in this particular issue, and I take it seriously. But those folks that do that work, those folks that try and get people in homes in our community, they are on the ground. And I think we need to hear their voices more than just them telling us that environmentalism is good and efficiency is good, or that we're not ready. Let's get them all on the table and say, let's get this done. But get it done on your time frame, all the time frame that you can agree to. That is what I'm suggesting to you. We've got a housing plan that we haven't fully ratified yet. And obviously this is a big component of it. It's a big piece of it, and something that I don't think any of us would vote for the housing plan unless this was part of it, honestly, because it is part of our goals and ambitions. But we're not done with that yet. And so I think we have time. I don't think the impacts are great. I was actually moved by one of the comments Ms. Bloomquist-Palmer made about, she called it, what was her quote? She said you drive till you can afford it or something like that. And then you think about environmental impacts relative to that. And are those a wash in the next year as we think about, those folks that are out there getting in these homes and they're having to drive in to do these jobs, as we kind of consider how the heck do we build affordable homes as part of this housing plan and then have them conform to these higher level of codes? Go ahead.
I would ask you then, as I was asking staff about an innovative and creative solution, what would be your motion if it were? How would you amend it?
Well, I would direct staff from this meeting forward, if this doesn't pass, that they initiate a process much like what I just described. They invite the Home Builders Association specifically. The 3 people that were in the room are obviously good representatives for their organization. They invite people that are part of Locals First, part of the other environmental groups in the community, and other stakeholders that may have interest in this issue. And they set a 12-month time frame.
Well, instead of postponing the motion until then, we could direct that now. It's been advised to us from staff that if we make this recommendation to jump to 2015, which you're suggesting at some point you will, and I think some of us here are, it doesn't have to be 6 months, is my point. What if it was 9 months?
Well,
What if it was 12 months?
I never got a sense from anybody that, as we were talking about this, and as I talked to other people, that they knew what that time frame was. And I agree with you, Dan. It can't be 3 years. It's not. It can't be 3 years.
It has.
No, I get that, but I think it's relative to the kind of issue that we're talking about here. You listen to Travis Oliver talk about the fact that it'll improve his business dramatically, which is a reasonable thing. He's got people in his company that can measure the heat loss stuff. He's got people on his staff already, right? All these other firms, they don't. So they have to hire an engineer to do that and calculate that. Those costs they can be fairly exorbitant. And so when we look at the average cost associated with this kind of project compared to real costs in our community, we don't really have a handle on that. I have to, agree with the testimony out there that stated that. We don't really know. And that's what I'm suggesting. It'd be a lot nicer to have that group, come to terms with all of those things. And that's the mandate. I mean, we're going to adopt it. You have some time to figure out what you like, what you don't like, whether 2018, which we, at least in my research, I understand that it's trying to make some improvements on the more onerous parts of the 2015
well, let me say this about reefer madness, and that is nobody here has said what line item is the most onerous of this 2015 IECC. What is it in here that is specifically gonna be costly, other than it's change. It's change, and it's it's gonna be more testing or more. I don't do the res check myself. I hand it to a 20-something kid because he can type faster than me. That's how onerous it is. This is not rocket science.
I thought the blower.
But with all due respect, it does have real-world costs.
Yeah.
They are substantial. They are in the thousands. You heard people testify that the number that would keep people out of homes is in the hundreds. And so we'll have those impacts, Dean. And I totally agree with you. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you. I just don't agree that we've done enough work up front to go ahead and adopt this. And you know what? Our staff says the same thing. Our staff has recommended we don't do this. And I'd like to listen to them.
I think our staff, if not to talk about our staff, but we gave them direction that a goal was to have parity with the county.
We were on that.
Which is, because that's the next plan that's the next point I'm going to make is you would rather have parity with the county, correct?
Right, but I'd also don't want to be regressive, and I'd just soon have parity with Bayfield as I would La Plata County, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And so.
But disincentivizing the builder community to build in our city in a time when we haven't even adopted a housing plan based on the costs associated with this, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense without going through this process.
So the discussion we heard about the $200,000 homes that the gentleman's built 3 of, and that's awesome. But I doubt if they were in the city of Durango, because the cost of land, I was going to blame it on realtors, but I'm not. I'm going to hold back just 1 second. So go there. Yeah, it's the land cost, It's the land cost. And there's a market in the city of Durango, and there's a market for homes to be built in the county, and they're two different.
I'm not going to deny your market. It's their market impacts are huge here, and everything we can do can be overrun by market impacts. But you know what? These are still real impacts. These are still real dollars.
We just got cut $800,000 for our transit system, to talk about transit for just 1 second. So we got this giant overarching game of whack-a-mole going on with land costs, with you know what scraper houses are cost in our neighborhood. There's never going to be an affordable housing unit that Sweetie's going to buy for her, in my neighborhood or your neighborhood. Those lots are going for $300,000-$400,000. Okay, so that's never going to be one of her clients.
I don't agree with you.
It's gone.
You know why I don't agree with you? Because we have this giant community called Three Springs that's building housing for first-time home buyers that I work with all the time.
Well,
and that is in the city. And we might actually annex other property that's like Three Springs in the city.
And they're already.
You know why they do it? But they lose money. We've heard every one of those people at Three Springs doing it. They would never do it again. They said that they are a very special entity. They are extremely well financed. You're not going to replace Three Springs as an entity to build something like that.
But it's
in the
happening.
future. You have to have builders like these folks in the room do it.
But it's happening. And in our, one of the tenets, one thing City Council is doing is creating densification of our community. We're encouraging mixed-use development, and that will create more homes, and it will create lower-cost homes.
If you're saying you're going to give up on affordable housing in the city of Durango, then I can't
No,
argue
I
with
didn't.
you on that.
No, I didn't say that. I would like so many other people. In 1980, when I moved here, I was on an affordable housing task force.
I know you are.
And with of all people, Gene Fisher, and he was talking about that. We've taught. This has been the same dialogue for 38 years. It's not going to go away, and the dialogue is absolutely more critical in many, many other tourist-based communities, recreational communities, communities with amenities like ours, all across the state and all across the nation. Where else are you going to go? Where people used to say, "Oh, I got to move back. I got to move back to Denver." Well, good luck. That's not going to happen. We've got to accommodate them here. We've got to provide transportation. We've got to provide many more opportunities for housing, because the land cost is so high.
Dean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
This
That's
is
what
not
I'm
the
actually
problem.
saying. But
This
I don't
is not the
agree.
problem.
I don't agree that we've taken every step we could with this community and adopted this at the pace that we ought to.
So let's talk
and our
about-
planning department.
Let's
says the same
talk
thing.
about how we can make a decision then tonight. What, are you suggesting postponing this? Are you suggesting going to a vote?
I think we should go to a vote.
Okay.
Because I think ultimately, if my argument isn't strong enough for 3 councilors to vote no on adopting this, then so be it. You've heard what I said. I think we should go to a vote. I don't want to postpone this testimony. I think we owe the community members that are here that testified a resolution. However, what I am suggesting is that we vote no on adopting, with the caveat that we're directing our planning staff to work toward adopting the 2015 or 2018 within the time frame set by that group, and at a minimum of 2 years.
I would like to take a more proactive stance and say we should adopt it with the 6-month rule as being proposed as an alternative methodology, and give staff, Albie and crew, to come up with those particular items within the 2015 IECC that are so problematic that either he can't implement them in the 6 months that we're allowing for this thing to roll out, or that he proposes to us as items that are so onerous cost-wise that they are not appropriate for implementation in our community. And when he comes up with those items, we can accept his suggested modification of the code.
With all due respect, Albie doesn't build homes, he inspects them, and we're hearing from a community of other people that do.
Of one more just middle ground that I tried to bring up later. How about the idea of within 1 year, we get together with our stakeholders and the home builders and all the organizations that you discussed, and we either adopt at that time 2015 or 2018 in a year?
I think that's not appropriate for the very reason that we haven't got 2018 dialed up for
IC codes?
For IC codes, the whole family.
Okay.
So there's an inherent value, and it's conspicuously absent when you don't adopt one section of the entire code.
That's true.
And being the energy code, that means either.
I was just trying to think if it made more.
No, I think it's good, but I don't see why not in the next 6 months we can't have that dialogue. We adopt the code and say, okay, pick out that, you can cherry pick it if you want, figure out those items that, just like the fire code, just that Dick referenced,
So we could have
the
amendments.
sprinkler system that was omitted from the fire code.
Come back with amendments is what
And come
you're
back
saying?
with an amendment. But in fact,
And who would make those decisions?
The stakeholder
Ultimately, ultimately, we make, we have to make decisions. And the
staff would
question
bring
is, okay, clearly we're not going, with the exception of Dean, I don't think any of us has the expertise to work through that nitty gritty. And I like Dean's suggestion. I mean, we've already heard from the city attorney that there are issues around, there may be some synchronization issues with other elements of the code. We may have to look at amendments over, before, over the next few months. I would be much happier to actually have a date certain for implementation. Every house that gets built is going to be inefficient for its entire lifetime. Every commercial building that is built is going to be energy efficient for its entire lifetime, unless, unless people eventually upgrade them. I should add for the benefit of the audience, there's a conflicting event tonight at benefiting the Environmental Center at Fort Lewis College, and we received more than a few letters from folks who couldn't be here tonight because of that conflict, who advocated very strongly for the energy conservation, for going ahead with the 2015 codes. One of the letters we got, I'm not sure if it's from one of those same people because it's an individual I didn't know, spoke about the very large investments that he had made in a century-old house to make it comfortable. And he said he has neighbors who are spending who are literally spending 10 times his energy costs per month, because he has been able to upgrade his century-old house, and they're living in a rental which has not seen that kind of investment. So I think those are the issues. I think we've kind of heard everything. I have, as I want to do, sort of laid back on this, and particularly as the mayor, I tend to get the last word anyway. I think the issue, everyone agrees that it would be desirable to be on the same codes, but we haven't been on the same codes for a long time. And we also have, members of the Home Builders Association who do build in Pagosa Springs and in Bayfield, and build in Three Springs, and are building in Twin Buttes, who are dealing with these issues. I agree with Councilor Bettine. There are incremental costs, but I think a significant amount of our ongoing building is already meeting these higher standards. 10 years ago, when I was a private citizen and without any dreams of ever sitting up here, I stood at that podium and advocated for approval of the Twin Buttes annexation, in part because it committed to being solar ready, to go back to another comment we heard earlier tonight, as well as meeting these high energy standards. My feeling at the time was, why should we build any building in Durango that does not meet those standards? And that was 10 years ago. Admittedly, there was a recession in between that really held things back. But if not now, when? We had this conversation 2 years ago, and the builder said, well, give us another year and we'll be ready to go. Well, we gave them 2 years, and now they say they're not ready to go. I think a date certain that the codes are coming, and years ago I knew a new teacher whose mantra was, you exaggerate and they'll approximate. People, and if you're in business and this is the requirement, you'll meet it. If there aren't enough, if the two blower door testers are too expensive, I don't think it's all that complicated to get the certification to do that. How long does it take? If people know on July 1st there's going to be a new market for additional blower door tests, I think we'll have them, I think we'll have inspectors. So I think we really need to, step up. And the flip side of this is, of all of the incremental costs that we're talking about housing, and we will, we're going to have a very similar conversation about the fire district impact fee in not very long from now. This is the one that pays back to the owner. All of the others are money, as Dean said, here's your check for $46,000 for permit fees. You know, every building is going to have that. In this case, there are going to be people at the margin who don't get their mortgage right now. If you're saving for a down payment and you don't quite make it this year, most people are going to keep saving. It's not like they're permanently out of the market. They do delay, and there's still somebody who's going to get that mortgage. And I think we need to build those houses. I've spoken before about our climate commitments. I ran, speaking of platforms, sustainability and climate protection were my platform. And this is one of our wicked problems, where we have a conflict of values. We all want affordable housing, and we all up here want to see our climate goals met. How can we do both and? And, you know, our housing program is definitely going in this direction. We do have a pledge of almost one of the things in these data for the November permits, all of a sudden there's 10 permits for 264 units with $30,000 in fees for multifamily. We've got 194 new workforce housing units that are going to start, I think, occupancy about a year from now. The Lumion Housing Project just got their low-income housing tax credits. They're going to build 36 new units. A handful of those are going to be permanent supportive housing units, which are going to help to address our homelessness situation. So, you know, this is a dynamic environment. There's an empty lot next to my house that was sold for, the house that stood on it was sold for $350,000. And they then had to do asbestos mitigation and demolition. So whoever buys that, whoever buys that house after the new owners live there for a while, is not going to be affordable for most of us. I think we have to look at the big picture here is to look at where we want to be and look back on 2017 as saying, this was the time when we took this particular step towards being a more sustainable, climate-friendly community. And by all means, let us have this conversation to say if there's anything we can do to tweak the codes to minimize the additional cost, let's do it. The one final point I would make is our custom has been to try to wait a year after new codes go into place. Alvy Moore has been very articulate about this in the past. Let the rest of the world experiment with the issues in the new code, and once we understand what that experience has been, let's go ahead ourselves. So it'll be 2019 when we're at least 2019 when we're looking at the 2018 code package. I don't want to wait those 2 years. I hope that we can have a process with the builders, with the county, and try to get everybody on the same page and stay on that same page for the indefinite future, so we never have to have this struggle. With that, I will ask if there's any additional comments from my colleagues.
But to answer two things here too. I mean, there's about 2 paragraphs that I think of when I mentally think about the 2018 IECC and its potential ease of use that could be actually implemented by the city of Durango in the 2015 code in that hybrid that I'm talking about. And so if there's anything that we see without jumping 2 years ahead and adopting the 2018 code, or considering that at this point in time, if there's things within that are in fact more efficient, we can instruct Alvy to make that suggestion, that we implement that. And that's what I'd suggest happen over the next 6 months. So with that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the 2015 IECC to be implemented. Is it July 1st?
July 1st, 2018.
July 1st, 2018. period.
It says,
It's a motion.
here, right here. Want me to say it?
Okay,
Want me to do it?
I keep losing my screen. So a motion to consider that we propose that we adopt the ordinance and have the city attorney prepare it to adopt the 2015 IECC to become effective on July 1st, 2018, in the form provided to the city council as an attachment hereto during the introduction of the ordinances section of the agenda.
I'll second.
May we have a roll call?
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
No.
Councilor Marbury.
No.
Mayor White.
Yes. And I think the conversation, I think, has also conveyed to staff our interest in seeing if there are ways of engaging the community and minimizing the possible negative impacts of this before it's adopted.
And thanks again for everybody, seriously,
Yeah,
for the representing really good aspects of both sides. Thanks.
I think in the interest of time, knowing that we also have some extra business at the end of the meeting, if there's anyone needs to take a break, otherwise I'd like to, sort of drive through the, I think the rest of the agenda is going to be pretty straightforward.
Okay, let's drive through it.
So let's
Back
do
to
it.
some candy in the background. Keep
Do
going.
we need any action on the?
I think we can continue.
The next item, discussion of possible action to continue the public hearing for the annexation and initial zoning of Lake Nighthorse.
You need a motion.
We need a motion to continue to.
Mayor, I will move to continue the public hearing of Lake Nighthorse annexation and initial zoning to January 16 of 2018.
Second?
May we have a roll call?
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Marbury.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. And we now go to the introduction of ordinances, of which there are, let's see, where did we?
We're at the
All right,
organizational
12.1.5 is down below. Okay, so we have 10 ordinances to work through. I don't think any of these are going to be challenging. The first is an ordinance confirming the organizational structure of the city of Durango. And what's the number of this?
This would be 2017-20.
Are you looking for a motion, Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve ordinance 2017-20.
Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Marbury.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. Item 11.2 is an ordinance amending Chapter 25, Article 3, Section 25-114 in the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango for the purposes of modifying sewer rates for residential, commercial, industrial users of the wastewater system and declaring an effective date.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 217-21.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Marbury.
Yes.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. Next, we have an ordinance granting an easement of to La Plata Electric Associations Incorporated, an easement located on city-owned property to accommodate power line improvements and electric loads for the Gagline Gulch area and declaring an effective date.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-22.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Marbury.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. Item 11.4, an ordinance providing for the regulation and control of the design, construction, quality of materials, erection, installation, alteration, repair, location, relocation, placement, addition to, use, or maintenance of one and two family dwellings.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-23.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Marbury.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. 11.5, an ordinance for the provision of minimum standards to safeguard life, health, property, and public welfare by the regulation and control of the design, construction, quality of materials, use and occupancy, location, and maintenance of all buildings.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-24.
Second.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Before going on, I would ask the city attorney, I have been reading the version from the, I've not actually been reading the entire full title of the ordinances.
Yeah, the printing on this, but for some reason the program didn't print them. So the full title is the rest of it, but it's been published, so I would say henceforth, let's read the whole thing. But
Okay, all right. That was 11.5. 11.6, we did vote there.
We need to do 11.6.
Okay, yeah. All right. I'll read the full title here. An ordinance for the regulation and control of the erection, installation, alteration, addition, repair, location, relocation, replacement, maintenance, or use of any plumbing system within the city of Durango, adopting by reference the 2015 edition of the International Plumbing Code, published by the International Code Council Incorporated, and declaring an effective date.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-25.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Next, an ordinance for the regulation and control of the design, construction, installation, quality of materials, location, operation, and maintenance of heating, ventilation, cooling, and refrigeration systems, incinerators, and other miscellaneous heat-producing appliances within the city of Durango, adopting by reference to the 2015 edition of the International Mechanical Code, published by the International Code Council Incorporated, and declaring an effective date.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-26.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Next, we have an ordinance providing for the regulation and governing of fuel, gas systems, and gas-fired appliances within the city of Durango, adopting by reference the 2015 edition of the International Fuel Gas Code, published by International Code Council Incorporated, and declaring an effective date.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-27.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Next, we have an ordinance adopting a fire code regulating and governing the safeguarding of life and property from fire and explosion hazards arising from storage, handling, and use of hazardous substances, materials, and devices, and from conditions hazardous to life or property in the occupancy of buildings and premises in the city of Durango, adopting by reference the 2015 edition of the International Fire Code, published by the International Code Council Incorporated, and in declaring an effective date.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-28.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Sure, why not?
Mayor White?
Yes. And finally, we have an ordinance for the establishment of minimum prescriptive and performance-related regulations for the design of energy-efficient buildings and structures within the city of Durango, adopting by reference the 2015 edition of the International Energy Conservation Code, published by the International Code Council Incorporated, and declaring an effective date.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2017-29.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. We now move on to administrative matters. First one, item 12.1.1 is discussion and possible action concerning a resolution adopting the 2018 annual budget for the city of Durango. Ms. Brown.
Good evening. City manager's proposed budget for 2018 has been reviewed and discussed by City Council. In addition, a public hearing was held on November 7th, 2017 to allow public participation and input. Per Council's direction, certain amendments have been made to estimated revenues and proposed expenditures. Amendments as recommended by staff have also been incorporated. Staff amendments are in the nature of corrections and adjustments as a result of better information obtained since the budget was originally proposed. During reconciliation, a list of items were reviewed by City Council. The attached resolution has incorporated all amendments, both staff's and City Council's. Any changes or amendments to the proposed budgets are summarized in the agenda documentation. The City Manager's 2018 budget will authorize spending in the amount of $80,645,104 for the operating funds and $13,651,494 for the capital improvement program. It is the recommendation of the City Manager that the City Council by motion approve the attached resolution adopting the 2018 budget for the City of Durango.
And the resolution number
It's
is?
2017-38.
38.
I make a motion that we approve the attached resolution adopting the 2018 budget for the City of Durango, Resolution R 2017-38.
Second. Roll call, please.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes.
Is this where the pay plan comes in?
It comes at the end of this section.
Okay.
Next, we have item 12.1.2, an ordinance appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts for the purpose as set forth below for the City of Durango, Colorado for the 2018 budget year.
I would just mention that this is the appropriations ordinance. It'll authorize spending for operations in this amounts of $80,645,104 and capital expenditures in the amount of $13,651,494.
And this is an ordinance, it's number 30?
Yes.
9?
I think the last.
30.
30. Yeah, okay.
Mayor, I'll move to approve ordinance 2017-30.
Second. Roll call, please.
Counselor Bricky?
Losing.
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item 12.1.3 is discussion and possible action concerning a resolution establishing the 2017 mill levy for the City of Durango. I would remark that this includes the increment in the mill levy passed by the voters in November. And this would be resolution 38, I assume. 39, that's right.
I make a motion that we approve the attached resolution R-2017-39, levying property taxes for the year 2017.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item 12.1.4 is discussion of possible action concerning a resolution adopting the 2018 Durango Business Improvement District Budget and Operating Plan.
I make a motion that we approve the attached resolution R-2017-40, approving the 2018 operating plan and budget for the Durango Business Improvement District.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And by dint of our amended agenda, we are now returning to the item that appeared originally as item 4.3, which is a discussion and possible action to consider approval of 2018 pay and classification plans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everybody just take a deep breath. We're almost done with all these items. We discovered a couple things that were either overlooked or in error, and let me just walk you through. This is the pay plan. You have a copy at the dais, and what's in red are the new titles, which were explained as you went through each line item in each department budget. So the first correction involves the position of network coordinator, and this position moved from pay grade 14 to pay grade 16, and it was not highlighted because it's a reclassification and not a new title. So we want to make sure that's reflected correctly. The second correction has to do with the transportation specialist, which is a new title, and that appears in red in pay grade 7. And the third and final correction is a legal coordinator was reclassified from pay grade 11 to pay grade 13. So the document that is at the dais has all those changes.
And this simply requires approval by motion.
Correct.
Let's see, what do we call this?
It's the pay plan,
okay.
approval of the 2018 pay plan.
Mayor, I move to approve the 2018 pay plan.
And I think we should specify as corrected.
Correct.
As corrected.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And that concludes the public portion of our meeting tonight. Council has on the agenda 4 executive sessions, but we will be shuttling into private session and back out in between at intervals to be determined by our discussions.
Mayor, I move that we convene an executive session to discuss specific legal questions with the city attorney as permitted in CRS 246402-4B.
Second. Roll call, please.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well.